Welcome back, everybody, to another conversation for the end of the world. My name is Brock Keel, as always, your host, and today we have Cody Kilpatrick. How you doing, man?
Good, man. How are you?
I am doing great. I actually had to make up that intro and test it out because someone decided to make a bop of an opening theme.
I'm so pumped you love it, dude.
God, I fucking love it. I've listened to it like 100 times. I'll be sitting there with my wife. It's like, hey, babe, you know what I haven't done in a while? She's like, no, please. I'm like, I haven't listened to my theme song.
That's how it always is, though. And anytime you're like making music and you like finally find something you love, it's like, oh man, check everything else out. I'm just spinning this for like the next 2 or 3 days. It's so funny. I'm I'm the same way.
Dude, I'm telling you. I'm just hoping I can do it justice because I've got a guy who made my logo rotating in a black background for like audio only podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully I'll be able to integrate that as an opening and then the theme starts. Now I have to like develop my editing skills, which are nothing. They're absolutely dog shit. And so I'm hanging on to it's been a week, so I'm hanging on to like 5 or 6 episodes right now that I'm just do I release these or do I just wait till I have them all and just release them all uploaded? But there's a couple I'll probably have to release, but we'll see.
That's so cool, man. I love it.
Oh my God. Because I found both of y'all at the same time. I think I released his ahead of time. Because it took him about a week and a half or two. He does a comic book called Radiant Collapse, a web comic. Cool. Yeah. So, and he just did the video editing for me. And then I found you. I reached out to you, and I was like, "Do I have a theme song and a back roll credit?" Yes.
Now you do.
Together. I love the bit. It's not just me opening up with 3, 2, 1 anymore.
That's 3, 2, 1's fine. Nothing wrong with 3, 2, 1.
Stock shit. So, tell everybody about yourself.
Well, yeah. So my name is Cody, like you said. I'm a musician in Seattle. Music is among one of the things that I do. I do production and video and lighting. And some like set design type stuff out here in Seattle as well. So had been doing my yearly tradition of January, which is a fun musical thing that it started, I think, like modular synth people who were like, all right, man, we're going to like show each other like what crazy patch we put together today. And we're just going to like do 30, it's 31 because there's 31 days in January, 31 of these like concoctions with modular synths. I don't know how much you know about modular synths, but it's like totally open-ended. You can create anything you want. And so some of the stuff they make is absolutely gnarly. One of my roommates in college was super into that, still is. He runs the modular scene here in Seattle pretty much. And he was like, yo, you should do that, but just like for more like songwriting, like mixing type stuff. And I was like, yeah, because I don't do modular, a whole lot of synth stuff at all, but was like, oh man, but I make music, so I should try and just put out 31 things in a month and just see what happens. And then it was super successful. Kept doing that year after year after year after year. So yeah, and then this year I did it and put it up on TikTok, and you saw it there, and then here we are.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm like, and this isn't a cap or anything, but I'm honestly shocked that it has not blown up more than it has. Like I thought, I found this beautiful young specimen right before he becomes popular. It's like the one guy that downloaded Among Us before it blew up.
Right, exactly.
Like, I've been playing this fucker for months.
Right.
You're no one.
I know, and then suddenly everybody's doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's one of those things where like I definitely should be like I've got like the content part down. I feel like I feel like what the hell do I know? But like I've got a product that I'm pumped about, but at the same time, any social media, any social type content thing, you need interaction as much as you need content. And this year was like, I mean, even just putting it on 2 platforms was the first time I'd ever done that. It was always just Instagram or just Facebook. And now this was like, oh, cool. We'll do a whole bunch of stuff and just see what goes up. And then realizing like, oh, that's cool. Posting is great. I didn't jump into the interaction side barely at all because I was so busy making the stuff.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's like that's great. And like that's kind of the thing with January for me at least. Every year has always been like a small, like not a small, a big learning experience from a bunch of small little aspects. And that was one of them for sure, where it was like, oh man, I'm just gonna post, it'll be great. I'm not as focused on the music this year as I have in some other years where I've been like slaving away or like trying really hard to make sure the chord progressions are just right or my mix is pristine in just the right way. This year was like, oh man, I want to teach myself how to do some video stuff. I'm going to teach myself how to do some video editing stuff. And then I'll just post it and see what happens. And now by the end of the month, I'm posting is like, oh man, I really should have carved out some more times to like go and like comment and interact with other people so that they can have like a
Yeah.
way to come see my stuff. But whatever.
I think one of the things, because like again, the dude on Radiant Collapse, I actually convinced him to start posting. I mean, he hasn't really posted a lot, Robert. On his TikTok, I know he said he got it just so he'd be like, nobody can steal the name, so it's still mine, so
Right.
maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean that's really important because my thing is trolling Badger, so trolling Badger with it, but on TikTok, and it's one of these like I don't know what it is. I got it on Twitter, I got it on Instagram, got it on Facebook, got it on Snapchat, anything I can think of. TikTok, I go
The one that
trolling
got
back.
away.
And it's no videos, no followers,
Of
or no
course.
followers following like 100 people. And I messaged the guy. I'm like, maybe he hasn't privatized his messages. And I'm like, hey man, this is mine. Like, I'll low key like pay you $50. Like, I don't know if this is what you did it for, but I want my name.
Just give
But
it back, man.
yeah, I had to put a zero, which I mean, I did that on a couple of games,
Sure.
but I mean, it's nothing. Like, I still tracking him. Like, I'll send him a message. I'm like, I'm trying to get out. Damned if I
Right.
don't get
Yeah.
it back. But the thing is with TikTok, I think one of the like, because I know with the videos, your first video, the algorithm's supposed to really blow it up to get you that
Mm-hmm.
kind of like hooked on the oh my god, 600 people. I I did it, mom. Look at
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Uh, she's got maybe 100.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then it was Blackpink, which I mean, huge, popular, but it's not the top songs. And I've
Sure.
realized a lot of the other guys who do like synths and like stuff like music production, they'll put like the Steven Universe track underneath it and then just play their music and just slide that bitch down to zero.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Another thing that I learned about January 17th, where it was like, oh yeah, if you want people to watch it, you gotta like use trending sounds and then
Sound,
just pop it down
yeah.
to zero. And I was like, that was never the point of this year. Maybe next year will be like the social media in January for me, where I really start messing around with the algorithm and the whatever people are actually using to boost their stuff. Because it's like, and I kind of talked about it a second ago, where it was like, oh, I'm gonna like pick my couple things that I really want to like isolate and learn. Like the first year I did it, I remember I would go through like over the course of a year, I'd say I had graduated from college a couple years prior, and was like really struggling to be consistent with music. Whereas like, oh, I'd go through like a couple weeks where I'd start making stuff, and then stuff would happen and I would just not have the routine down. And so thinking about it, it's like, oh man, January would be awesome because it'll just get me in that rhythm of doing something every day. And it's all about consistency. And so did that to the extent that I could, and it was super productive, and I made more stuff than I had ever done in a month, and it was awesome. And then the next year was like, okay, so let's dial that in to make it like super quality. Because like first year was like, it was fine. It's an accurate snapshot of where I was as a musician, and it's valid for that reason and valuable for that reason. But like looking back on it now, I was like, yo, the mix could use some work. Some of your recording techniques were garbage, and like little things like, oh, so let's work on making a polished musical product. Let's make something that's like really like it's musically catchy, it's engaging, but it also is like smooth and even and has all these good mixing things. And so really focused on that. It was great. And then this year was like, okay, I feel like, you know, more projects under my belt, more work that I've done. It's like, I feel like I can do that at a pretty consistent level. Let's really try and create a all around engaging piece of content. So that means, learning video and lighting and editing and trying to like not just create musical that or a musical piece of content that's like good music, but arranged and composed in such a way that I can create a video that follows what's happening musically. So like kind of telling almost a story of like what instruments are happening. And so like, okay, we start with this idea. Oh, see what I did to build it there. And something that has a visual parallel to what's happening audio wise. And it's bit off a lot more than I could chew, which ties into why I didn't have any time to like really engage with anybody on the platform that I was posting to. But it was like, that wasn't really the point. The point was just to make the thing and learn from it. And that happened in spades, which is great. You know, it's the whole point.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely something when you're producing something, and I hesitate to call myself a producer and by any stretch, because yeah, it's just like it's like I had a friend. It's like, so when are you going to put what did he say? He said, when are you going to put public influencer in your Instagram byline? And I'm like, not 100,000 subscribers, and I'll do that. And
you're like, maybe when I can afford to like hire a staff member to write it into my bio for me.
An assistant or something. Yeah, no, I would never. But like when you're producing something, there's always this fine line of, does it need to be good, or do I just need to get it out there? Like I feel like, especially what I feel like, again, like I told you, and I've said 100 times, I'm using a phone right now. You're probably hearing me through gargled garbage, but if I waited the 6 months that it would take to save up money for this $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 complete setup, something's going to come up and I'm going to have to spend half of it. And it's going to take another 3 months off top of that 6 to get it out. So I got to do it.
No, that whole dynamic is so true. And that's what this whole January thing, which like is kind of like my theme for today or something or whatever, but like that's what's so great about it, is it forces you to learn that lesson. Because if you obsess over whether it's good enough, you won't get past day one. Like it's just it's not gonna happen. You might get, well, I should say, you might get lucky, you might get past day one, but you're not getting through a full week of doing stuff every day if you're obsessed with perfection. Like you have to at some point give that up and say, hey, you know what, good enough is good enough. And it totally changes your perspective on like what is valuable in content. And obviously I'm very focused on music, but like it's true of anything. It's true of TV. It's true of literature. It's true of photography. It's true of podcasting and even conversations and like relationships. It's like there's obviously a quality threshold, but that quality threshold is dynamic. It grows and changes over time and external factors, like what's going on in the world around you, like what the general population deems as quality or good or trendy, or all of these things are changing. So that quality threshold has to change with it. And the only way to truly remove yourself from that is just to obsess over that quality threshold. Like if it's here one day, it's going to change later. It's not going to make me better trying to hit a moving target, you know? So it's like at that point, just put the thing out. Like that's, I mean, you probably go down to Southern California for whichever of the, you know, hundreds of startups that are going down there, and maybe all of them will tell you it's like, no one's going to get it right. You just have to go and then fix the problems as they come along. People putting out software, it's like, yo, like, hey, we got this app, we're going to build it. We have this idea, we're going to generate it. Yeah, it's going to have bugs, of course, but we're going to put it out now, because if we don't put it out now, someone else will.
You Absolutely. Know? And that's the fear, right? Like, I mean, and not normally for podcasting or some music, because I mean, even like I remember like a year and a half ago, Katy Perry was like sued for the Dark Horse rapper. I listened to that. I was nothing. That's nothing alike. It's like all the jurors are driving around in Mercedes right now because that sounded nothing alike. But
totally.
And I mean, that'll come about as close as you can. You can't really say like that I'm stealing an idea from another podcaster, because no, I'm not. I'm a different person. I talk about different things. I have a different expertise, which is nothing.
Right.
But as far as, I'm just talking on the internet. But as far as like someone with an app or something, like Flappy Bird, like I remember reading that from like I remember because he was a Vietnamese software programmer that just made the app off the fly, and then he got a bunch of complaints about, I'm addicted, this game's ruining my life, I'm sure a lot of them were just bullshitting. It's like, hey man, I spent 2 hours. I was supposed to clean in my life, and my wife yelled at me, so it's your fault and not mine. And he got upset, and he's just like, I've ruined a person's life, and that's enough for me to ditch $10,000 a day, which is
Right.
like
Nuts.
50,000 in Vietnamese currency,
Right.
just because I feel bad. So he deletes it, and 1,000 clones pop up right behind him.
Yep.
So it goes to show, like, even though he came out with it first, the second you let go of it, like, someone's just going to be like, yeah, no, that was a great idea, thanks for
Totally.
giving up that space for me.
Totally. And that's like, I mean, you even just said it. What that was literally the point that I was going to make is it's so much more about holding space. It's so
Mm-hmm.
much like, hey, like maybe it's not like obvious or even like overt in most people's minds, but there's a sense of like everybody, well, and maybe I'm just being optimistic to say I feel like everyone subconsciously can like view anybody who's posting something as saying like, okay, they have something to offer. It might not be my thing, it might not be my favorite thing, but like there's a market, there's an audience for that somewhere. And the moment you bow out of that because it's just like, oh, it's not what I had in my head, it's like, okay, well, you can get to where it was in your head, but like you're just saying, there's 100 other people in line behind you for that idea. So like hold space, have your idea, perfect it along the way, and then that just it doesn't prevent because you're not trying to like compete and keep other people from getting your idea. I mean, maybe, but like that whole idea of like, hey, like take your idea, own it for what it is. Like there's value in just having and expressing the idea content
Mm.
wise. There's nothing to be ashamed of in not meeting a quality threshold. And it's so funny. I have this conversation with my wife a bunch, and it goes both ways. I tell her this, she tells me this, but it's like the idea of like I keep saying quality threshold, but like a standard for quality, right? It's
Yeah.
valuable only in as much as it keeps you motivated and driving forward. If a quality threshold is inspiring shame or guilt or failure or demotivation, it's not helpful. Ignore it. But if it's
Yeah.
keeps like, oh man, it gives me if you're the kind of person who that threshold is like, oh man, that's a target, I can go for that. Great, use it. But if it's like killing you, it's like that's not your motivator, then don't worry about it. The point is to hold space and have your ideas, and that's actually good enough.
Oh, absolutely. Like, just doing it, just getting it out there, just putting it out there. I mean, of course, us just as like content creators, you as more of a musical producer, like just putting it out there. I mean, I and you're always gonna fixate on, like, it hasn't happened to me, but I have a friend in Britain, Christian Reeve. Shout out to him. He actually did a bit more on his TikTok, and I've only done 3 videos. He uploads like the library of clips. I'm sure he's up
Mm-hmm.
to 100 videos by now.
Oh
Just
yeah.
him doing musical covers on his guitar, him doing segments from his podcast. And he had one guy that's just like, you suck. And then, like, the next 100 messages are just this battle royale between him and this guy. And I'm like,
Yep.
you can't let that kind of negativity, because there's a billion people. If you've got 100 people in a
Yeah.
room, one of those guys is going to be a dick. And if the rest of them were saints, like if you had 99 Mother Teresa's and one Hitler, you cannot concentrate on the Hitler. You've got to, like,
Oh yeah.
there's 99 Mother Teresa's. You gotta like run with that.
Right. Totally. And like that dynamic you just talked about of like it's ultimately it's a comparison dynamic where you've got like you're mentioning 99 people versus one, and like this impact is great, but like this actually holds some
All.
impact that competes with that somehow. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it ties in. It's one of the trending TikTok formats that's been going around. The whole like I don't even know if it's a format. I've just seen a bunch of videos saying this kind of like, oh man, like I only got 30 views on this thing, and that's like kind of depressing. It's like, yeah, but if
But
30
30
people rolled into your apartment and
yeah.
saw what you were doing, you'd be pumped. Like it was like you gotta like kind of put that metric in place where it's like if the numbers are what's really what you're really going for, then like okay, if that's a quality threshold, either it's helpful for you and it'll motivate you and drive you, or if it's depressing you, like ignore it. That's not the reason you should be doing it.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely. That's one of the small businesses TikTok trends I
yeah.
was that. And I was actually like talking to my friend about that, because he's a little bit more or less, he's a first episode Justin Watson. he was talking about how he doesn't really understand like the whole Twitter aspect, how like Twitter's filled with leftist social media warrior hoopla blah. And I'm like,
Right.
no, 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 no. It's 2% of the entire platform putting out 70% of the content.
Right.
And he's like, how? And like, how are you getting these giant corporations to back down so easily? I'm like, well, Justin, what would you do right now if you looked at your phone and had 300 missed calls from 300 different numbers? He'd like, I'd change my phone number. I'm like, yeah, of course. What
Mm-hmm.
would you do if there was 20 people outside your net, outside of my window right here with pitchforks and flames and says, we want Justin Watson? He's like, you have a firearm, right? I'm like, yeah, no, of course I do. But it's like you like you say it's nothing, but there's 300 million people in this country, and if a fraction of them decide to go after one person, we're biologically, evolutionarily, we're only built to deal with 150 people max. So
So
anything over that threshold is just
it's
you can't.
terrifying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I mean, 100 years ago, we never had this. We had that 150. Maybe if you're in New York City, you could be like, you have like a sly evolutionary lead on
Yeah.
like backwoods monkey like me. But no, absolutely not. I have no like I have the understanding of that there's more than 150 people, but my my nervous system, my processing, it can't comprehend more than that.
Oh yeah. At some point it does become juggling people at that point where it's like, oh man, if I'm gonna give attention to this thing or this person or this, it's like, okay, cool. Well, something's hitting the back burner. Don't know what that's gonna be, but we'll find that out
Uh,
later.
and it's usually, and as a content creator, it's usually you.
That's yeah,
It's your
exactly.
sleep, it's your
It's
mental health.
100% me. Yeah.
You haven't contacted your mom. Normally, it's been one call a week. Now it's like it's been 3 months. Are you alive? It's like I can't
Right.
respond to that. Too many motherfuckers think they know shit.
Like, I'm so sorry. Listen, I had 151 people this week, and it just threw everything out of whack. I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. You had to go bye bye. We've had 20 years. These fuckers just got in the game.
Let's get a rotation going, you know?
Exactly. And that's my fear when I see people with like 151 episodes. I'm like 151 people that you will probably re-interview. I'm like I mean I want to because I brought you in particular and everyone else on because you do something that interests me. I didn't bring you on because I was like, oh, that's a person. He's small. He'll respond. No, I find you objectively interesting and I need to talk to you. And again, of course, I had you because I wanted to more or less get a theme song out, which
Hell yeah.
100% did. And then you just kept throwing out banger. Like, I mean, and you said beforehand, like you were like people scared of failure, but that's kind of disingenuous from you because you didn't have one flop all of January. Like, like you're sitting here on your high pedestal. It's like you will fail sometimes, unlike me. But
I mean, all you got to go do is scroll down my Instagram to that first year of January, and let me tell you, you'll find some flops.
yeah, and that's why I am not upset whatsoever that my first recording device is a phone and the internal mic because
I
I'm
mean,
up to episode 500 with that $2,500 setup. Ain't gonna matter then.
absolutely not. Yeah, and like looking at, I mean, hey, if numbers are your metric and they're your driving factor, then like go look at what some TikTok content that's got millions of views, or I mean, that's on a phone, that's on the internal mic too. Like
Yeah,
it really is, it comes down to just quality content, and like I said, what quality is will definitely change, but like
yeah,
like the posts that are getting tons of engagement are, I mean, by sometimes a very bizarre metric of quality, very, very full of quality. Might not be
yeah,
my same metric, but like it makes, like, you can do the math and be like, oh yeah, like I get why, 2.5 million people watch this video for sure. Like, yeah, it was recorded on a potato, but it's interesting. Like,
yeah. Or they
it
did the
definitely.
bus challenge or something. We can
I
understand
mean, I mean,
survival.
yeah, that's
We
quite,
can
yeah.
understand.
It's again a different metric of quality. It's
Mhm.
it's what it's what a large volume of people are wanting to see. So it's like,
Yeah,
however, how well it meets that demand, how well that expectation is satisfied, plays into what the general population would describe as quality. You know?
yeah, absolutely.
it's bizarre,
So
but it is what it is.
so you said you do a lot of professional stuff in Seattle. Is music production, video editing, all that stuff your 9 to 5, or
It
is it just
is.
a
It
moderately well paying side hobby?
it's a little bit of both, but my um so literally minutes before I even jumped on this call, I was doing just some freelance video editing for a production house here in Seattle. They're like, "Oh man, we shot a ton of footage this year. We need a 30-second sizzle reel. Here's what you have to pull from. We need 30 seconds by the end of the day." And so it's like, "Oh, cool. Yeah, like great. I've got, 4 hours of content of them just from cameras or from program
Oh God.
footage or from recording." But like that's one example where it's like, oh yeah, I'm on their roster of people. So they roll through. It's like, yeah, like our 4 staff don't have time because we've got X, Y, and Z going on. Hit the freelancers, see if they've got time to do it. I said yes. Did that a little bit today. That was like not musical at all. They gave me their library of music to pull from. They gave me their library of video to pull from and just mash it up, make it work. But like my 9 to 5 type job is incredibly bizarre and inconsistent. And so sometimes it means audio editing, sometimes it means adding my own musical elements and like kind of what I was doing for January, but like adding that to other musical performances, kind of in a music video type sense. Sometimes it's building a stage for a video shoot. Sometimes it's rigging lights so that a performance can have the right lighting. Sometimes it's operating the console for said performance. It's like it's a whole bunch of different things, and it's a whole bunch of different things right now because of COVID too. So like so much of my job ended up being live venue type space, and now it's almost entirely changed to like pre-record, produced, curated content, which is great. It's fun. I spent most of my time doing audio type things and like dealing with like team management and volunteers and stuff of like, okay, people are jumping in to help, make sure that they're not going to blow the whole operation, or like, hey, like this particular gap in our production for this event needs coverage. We need you to do that. Kind of a catch-all almost. But then come the pandemic, it's like, oh man, we need to do everything video. And video was a huge black hole for me, whereas I knew all the other stuff, a lot about graphics and design and AV projectors, lights, speakers, audio, all that stuff. But like cameras and video, like I knew absolutely nothing about. And then it was like, okay, cool. Do you think you could figure that out? We've got, a window of a month and a half before we need to start posting. Can you pick that stuff up? And I was like, I mean, I can pick it up well enough so that if we have capable like DPs and capable people on the floor to do the thing, that I can direct them. And so that was kind of February and March of last year was like, okay, cool. And honestly, it was the fastest turnaround too, because we were, let's see, mid-February, yeah, like the third week of February last year, and setting up for a big conference. I had designed, in fact, I might even have the photo. If this might not even show up on. Actually, no, it's not worth shooting. That's months ago now. My photo roll is way too stacked for that. We'll be scrolling for hours. I'll send it for you later, and you can superimpose it if you want. Building a set for a conference that was happening in Seattle, and so I got basically, like I was saying, catch all. It's like, hey, we need an LD. We need someone to design the stage and do the lighting for this conference. And so like, cool, I'll put together a thing. We put together a stage plot and did some CAD drawings and like got the whole like figure out what lights were going to fly, what we need to go rent and set up and generators and all that stuff. And we literally built the thing and it was insane. And then we're 3 days from the thing, and I'm starting to program the lights and the show and all the content. And we get the call. It's like, hey, this is getting canceled because of COVID. So tear it all down and ship it back. And
No.
literally got the call that day being like, this is going to shut down for a lot longer probably. So we're going to probably shift from doing things live and like some like really minimal camera work to like primarily camera work. We need you to put together a purchase, like a package for what we need to weather this if this is long term. So it's like, cool. Like I can talk to people that I know, I can figure that out. And then over the course of the last year, it's just been like, cool, I've got time. This is my job to like make sure all of our stuff is getting filmed and edited. And so it's like, oh, I might as well like learn this stuff and actually do it for myself. And so that's been the journey, was like that whole process, which is great. It's been awesome. Like I said, that the black hole that I wanted to fill and didn't really have the opportunity. And lo and behold, here we are.
See, so this is interesting because normally the people I interview that will first initially respond due to my channel's size or lack thereof, they're the kind of people that still hold their 9 to 5s and are very passionate about the careers that they want to pursue. So I'm actually very surprised. Like you see, like it all comes out super naturally. Like I've been doing this for the year that you've done this, a very professional kind of flow. That's something I feel a lot of people would be extremely interested in. Um, and especially with how, like you said, COVID and how you needed to move out of your audio only space up to lights, production, programming, everything like that. How because I know you said how you had all that programmed, and the last minute, the very day of, they canceled it. I don't think that's really going to happen anymore because then they'll be like, okay, move to phase 2. We're going to virtual only. We'll have the dude on the stage, and it'll be all
Totally.
broadcasted to the people with their
Yep.
digital passes. With all that said and done, and with the CDC and WHO and everybody saying like, hey guys, it's probably going to be another flu that we're not going to be able to detect, and it's going to sweep through every year with a new variant.
Sure.
How important do you feel your positions and positions that mimic yours is going to be to the future of conferences, entertainment, and such and such like that?
Oh, hugely. This year has been, I mean, just looking at how Zoom has done in the last year, where, 2018, 2019, people are like, what is this? We've got Skype, we've got other things that already handle this. And suddenly they've found a niche that suddenly is no longer a niche. It's this very important thing. And I feel like the
It's almost
big,
a utility.
yeah, truly, honestly. I feel like people who are, I mean, if you're in like AV world anyway, and you're kind of doing this, production is kind of the dumb catch-all descriptor for that. But like audio, lighting, cameras, and like venue type stuff, like those people are, if so, the short answer to your question is very important. But there's the asterisk on that is there's not going to be that opening in the market unless you're able to kind of do more than one thing. Like if you are a just audio person, you'll
Mm-hmm.
need to probably really, really scout out production houses or um, companies that are looking that have like that particular gap in their existing infrastructure. So they're like, hey, we are pivoting and all we need is this audio thing. The siloed like production specialist, where like I'm thinking of like even like live touring stuff. I did total side note, but like I did before I was at my 9 to 5 job now, I did a bunch of work selling merch here at most of the venues in Seattle. So like it's not CenturyLink anymore. It's Climate Pledge Arena or whatever Jeff Bezos decided to name it. Um, that no, that's yeah, and like Key Arena downtown, and there's a bunch of amphitheaters just outside Seattle, the Gorge, and all these different places. And so I worked for the company that does merch at basically any big venue in Seattle, in Washington for the most part. And getting to see like the pre-COVID production experience for putting on tours and live performances is just a enormous conglomeration of specialists. So you've got your front of house audio expert. He's got his team of monitors and cable runners and all these things, and you've got grips for lighting, you've got engineers, you've got safety officers, like everybody who's just got their absolute like niche corner, and they've all come together under either a union or a touring company that has like reached out, and they just are filling all of the available slots. Whereas now it's like we need, like all of these companies are freaking out and having to adjust, and it's like, well, what we need, because money is super lacking, what we need are people who can do everything or several things so that we can cover as many of the check boxes with the smallest amount of salary necessary to pay out. And so it's like people who have been like, oh no, I'm just the audio guy. It's like, cool, great. Those are the people who need to like start diversifying, and like, not that they can't, but people have, and people will continue to find little niches and corners and stuff where that's a need and they fill it for sure. But it's not the steady guarantee that it always has been if you're in that
Yeah.
lane.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I even somebody like me who knows nothing about the industry, it's like diversification has always and will always be almost essential. Like you
Totally.
can't be the guy, you can't just be the contractor that does framing, and you've got to get the contractor because I know I have cousins and uncles that have contracting firms or know people that have
Sure.
contracting firms. It's never just the roofer or the plumber. It's the roofer that also is the plumber and
Right.
also does the tile work, and then the lumber guy who also does the electrical. It's
Yep.
never just one thing. And if it is, like if we were in some alternate universe where it's like we only do electric, we only do framing, we only do roof work, there could be like one guy isekai'd from our universe over to theirs. He's like, I actually know how to do everything, and be like, he's now Jeff Bezos of construction. Like everybody,
Right. Right. Right.
like, how the fuck do we get this guy?
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Diversification of anything is always a good idea, and experience and talent is absolutely not exempt from that.
yes, and like even like listening to like because I've got like 6 hours of like I was listening to you talking about you had the 4 hours of camera reels, and I'm like, that's 3/4 of an anime season. That's a lot of time. And then I'm sitting here thinking myself, it's like, no, no, no. You've got about 6, 7 hours of how to be a YouTuber videos under your belt yourself.
Totally.
And one of the things that they said was, you need to learn how to do your own video editing, because not only is that good for you and the quality of your video, maybe you'll get good enough and make enough connections to where you can do some freelancing work, and that gets you out of your 9 to 5 focused onto
Yep.
your career. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, because you've got a lot of people like the Sway House. I think they have like their 5 or 6 main guys, and then each guy has like a production team where they're just like kind of like maybe they're. And I'm not saying that there is, just in case there might be in someone like, hey, you're making fun. There could be like a bimbo person who's just really hot and has like a high EQ and knows how to sway people with like
Sure.
whatever word gargles out of his or her mouth, but she's not going anywhere unless she has like someone who can hold a phone like straight.
Totally. Yeah, and that whole dynamic of like right now everybody's scrambling trying to figure out what their job, what their business, what their home life is like. Everybody's freaking out as to like everything looks different now, and like human nature is like so averse to change anyway. So when everybody's feeling change, we feel it in ourselves, we feel it because other people are talking about them feeling it. So it's this constant fear of like, not fear I guess, but like everyone being like, I don't like change, I want it to stay the same. And it's like, just it's not natural to be okay with that. But the people who somehow manage to either get okay with it or motivate themselves with it, or ride it, or just get lucky, I guess. But like the people who can manage change that way are the people who are doing really well right now. And diversification
Absolutely.
forces you to be good with change by teaching yourself a new thing, by exposing yourself to a new field of interest or study or a hobby or a talent or an experience or whatever. You inherently wear down that fear mentality of like, things are different, things are changing, that's bad. So it's like the more things you do, you realize, oh, this was different, but it worked out well. Oh, this was different, and it didn't necessarily work out well, but I learned from it, and that turned out well. And it's like you learn slowly the more things that you do, and the more people that you interact with, and the more things you try and fail at, that change isn't necessarily bad. And like that's the people who are thriving in the pandemic right now are the people who have either already had that muscle worn down and like, oh yeah, it's changed, let's figure out how we can work this to our advantage, or the people who were just like, it is what it is.
Yeah, like it's like, oh well, I guess I need to take a vacation now because the industry is collapsing, and I've got
Right.
enough money saved up where I can make it 6 months, because that's what they said it's going to last 6 months, so we'll
Right.
be fine.
Yeah.
Y'all are
Right.
just furloughed. And then they're like, well, I like being paid to sit at home, but I'm also creative, and my whole thing is creating, so I need
Right.
to find something else. And then you
Totally.
have that company that has that muscle that you were speaking about, and they're like, hey, I'm not going to be able to come back because they know what they're doing and they're working now. And then that
Right.
person who doesn't have that muscle is like, wait, people are working now? I thought the industry was dead for a moment.
Totally. Yeah, it's weird, man. It's just a weird, and like, I'm not saying anything that literally everybody hasn't already said in the past 6 months, but it's just weird. It really, really is.
Yeah, I mean, I know, and especially down here, I know a lot of people don't like hearing the words "new normal," but I mean, we might have to face the fact that it is, because, like it or not, history changes the further you go into the future. Like there has always been a new normal. Like, I'm pretty sure back when someone invented a bow and arrow, the spear chuckers were like, well, this is just a fad. It's never gonna
Yeah.
bow arrows never
Exactly.
I mean, they're not even that accurate. And then the other guy's like, what if I have this little decorative feather? It makes a little flashy, but it also helps straighten that bitch out in flight. And then the spear chuckers are kind of like, oh well,
Yep.
shit. Now I
Totally.
guess I gotta learn how to start shooting bows and arrows. And
Yep.
then it's too late because that one guy was just like, you gotta embrace change.
Yeah, it's just everybody who's on the cutting edge of whatever change is, whether the force that caused the change is good or bad, there's a intrinsic value in not even accepting, but like welcoming and seeking out change. I feel like
Yeah.
it's very uncomfortable, and it is definitely, it's also not for everybody. Like, not that some people are literally not built for the emotional and mental strain of managing all that, and that's absolutely fine. And those people are maybe not as well equipped to handle what's going on right now, but they're definitely equipped. They're more equipped to handle things that are like actually holding things down. And like, I'm not one of those people, but like my wife is, and she's like, we constantly have this. It's honestly, it's great. It makes her better. It makes me better. Of like, the sense of, I'm always like, oh, this is great. We can move forward. We can adjust. We can be dynamic and all this thing. And she's like, which is great. But when it stretches me and puts me out at the very edge of that, I tend to,
Yeah.
like you said, ignore myself and put my sleep schedule behind. And she's very good at being like, hey, that's great. Dynamic is awesome. Be that. But also, maybe let's just chill
Chill.
for a little bit.
Oh yeah, like because myself, like I keep look because I follow the stock market a lot, so it makes sense for me to have like Bloomberg and
Totally.
like Yahoo Finance and apps like that up there, even though I don't have the subscription, but I'll still get the notifications for
Yep.
like whenever it's like Elon Musk just made another thing about Bitcoin. I'm like, well, time to go look at my Bitcoin stash. Let's see how
Yep.
that motherfucker's doing. Um,
Hmm.
like every week since May, it's always been 700,000 more people have lost their job. They'll have like these speculation opinion pieces. It's like polls predict that 40% of lost jobs now will not make a comeback due to either autonomization or just people being able to multitask or
Right.
freelance from other countries or from their homes. So,
Right.
I mean, myself is like at the very beginning because, like, I remember back in November when this started coming out, I heard about the first time on Philip DeFranco on YouTube,
Hmm.
like, because my mom's a nurse, so I know everything about like I'm not an expert or nothing, but I've heard enough to where I'm like, flu is bad. Flu could be worse because, but we know flu is bad because you get the flu, you're sick the next day, and there you go.
Right.
When they said this whole asymptomatic thing, I was like,
Oh no.
I'm like, so you can walk around for a day having it and spreading it. I was like, oh no 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 no, this is bad. But then
Yeah.
when it came over here and it's like three, and everybody was joking like, oh, Alabama's like second to last country to have a recorded case, and I'm like, no no, it's not good. And then everybody starts losing their jobs, and
Hmm.
I've run this point to the ground, but I will run this point to the ground for the rest of my time because I 100% believe in it. I have it because you do have, like you said, the older generation and the younger generation, and the younger generation is more susceptible to embracing change because that's what young people do.
Totally.
So I feel like there's the corporations like let's say Walmart for just
Sure.
simplicity, or Amazon. Amazon
Yeah.
more reflects it now than Walmart, but we have a distribution center near us where you will have these manual forklift drivers that will take a pallet of stuff out of the reserve and slide it into an active slot so that then an order picker can come over, pick the appropriate cases, and put it on their pallet to be shipped to a store. Now, in the frozen section, they have that autonomized. So it's just a robot that does it. It spills it sometimes, but they have a net chain it catches, and they'll send a guy to go throw it up and save what he can.
Yep.
That's because it's cold. So they had to make that change because people aren't going to work in negative anything degree weather on
Right.
a regardless of how much they have on their body.
Right.
So with this virus, autonomy is always coming. It's always going to come. I mean, you've probably seen that Boston Dynamics episode where they're like doing the "Now I Can Dance" theme song. It's like
I
dancing.
haven't, but it
Oh
sounds
no, it's it's oh my god, no, it's scary. Like this, it's like so we're laughing at what's going to kill us. Like it's these giant robots, like they can do flips, and I was like, oh cool, that's a flip, that's nice. And he goes up the steps and does a backflip onto the thing and throws his hands up like an Olympian.
Oh, good. Okay.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, great. Like it's nice to know what's going to be strangling my life force in the next coming robot wars. But
Always appreciate a good heads up, you know?
yeah, no. And then like I don't know if you've seen Black Mirror where they've got that robot dog hunting them
Mm,
down.
yep.
They've got Spot like and he's just
Oh,
sitting there
yep.
dancing
Yep.
with his legs like this, and I'm like, oh, he has so much dexterity. Ah,
Yep.
but with this virus, you've got people like you had Tyson in like March or May, full page on the New York Times. Guys, the food system is about to shut down because all of our people are getting sick and we're having to shut down plants.
Yep.
So, what are the young executives and the people with minor influence going to do? Let's autonomize the workforce. Fuck the humans, they get sick and don't come into work.
I mean, yeah,
So,
it just accelerates that
yeah,
inevitability kind of it.
yeah,
It definitely
exactly.
alerts. Yeah, it kind of pokes a sleeping bear, maybe not even a sleeping bear, but like a mildly disinterested knows that it could probably start doing that, but not really. It's too lazy to do it right now. Bear. It's like
Yeah,
now it's like, oh, I'm starting to see the value of doing this.
yeah. So again, back to the original point off of this wild tangent.
I'm here
Need
for it.
to have like 3 or 4 side gigs. Like I think the
Yeah.
future of Earth is not going to be I get up in the morning, go to my 9 to 5, come home, take care of my kids, eat dinner, go to sleep, wake up. I think it's going to be I'm lucky to have a 9 to 12 and 5 other side gigs that kind of average out just a bit below what my 9 to 5 used to pull in for
Yeah.
those of us who don't get in there initially, like you decided to go into your video, your production, your lighting, your generalized AV stuff, you're going to be fine. But if you've got a guy who's just audio and he like, I've got a friend who does video, he'll throw me the audio stuff. But once that friend decides he wants to do audio stuff too, he's like, hey man, look, I appreciate it, but there's like so many people that already do that
Right.
they the industry standard now is you need to know how to do everything. We were just a bit behind on the times.
Right.
So I have to go where the winds are. So
Yeah.
you need to start getting it. So now that person is going to start struggling to get to where everybody else already is, yourself included. And I think that's how it's going to be for everyone who doesn't do any kind of AV work. They will have a side gig on top of the 9 to 5 if they can find one.
Yeah. And like obviously some fields are way more prepared to have, some support or infrastructure for that. I think of like, and obviously because I'm in Seattle, I think of like Amazon and Microsoft where it's like, yeah, like that adjustment means literally nothing. Like for
Uh,
them, they're like literally the existing staff could probably pick up what it takes to be in another department in little to no time. So at that point, it just becomes more of a like work share environment where it's like, oh, here are the tasks instead of this exclusive department. It's like, all right, let's allocate these people to that task. And like, but like that, you can't do that in every job environment. Like not every job market has that kind of flexibility like tech does.
no. And even there's like this one thing, like in Japan, I saw them doing. They're like to combat the coronavirus, they have stationary robots bolted to the floor, and people with Oculus Rift type rigs work the robots to pack shit. I'm like, so theoretically, you could have a DoorDash type. I want to work 30 minutes to control the robot and get to work,
Yep.
and that's horrifying. Like, what
I
if
mean,
this like all
it
of
is
create?
in some, I mean, in some respects for our current concept of what like society is currently, that's
Yeah.
super weird and super like
Oh God.
jarring. But
Oh
it
yeah.
also like in a world that like a single strain of, well, I guess several strains now, but like a single strain of the flu can like shut everything down. The ability to have like drones in a sense is like oh, this is actually safer. Like
Yeah.
this is,
Oh no. Absolutely.
and so it's like
Absolutely.
it's this weird cognitive dissonance between like, oh man, that's weird, that's different, I don't know if I like that, but it's like,
But
oh,
it's
but actually that could,
definitely better.
I see some ways that this could be a win. It's like ultimately what it comes down to is trying to make sure that the wins happen for the people who need them. Like big companies, Walmart, Amazon, don't need another win. Like
No, they don't.
all the people, getting laid off need the win for sure.
Because because you like even with that like aspect, kind of like the DoorDash setup for like even like with DoorDash, like there was days I could be like, hey, I can work for 10 hours driving a car, driving somebody's
Oh
food. That's
yeah.
cool. Or then Wednesday you're like, well, I don't really feel like it. But in the traditional job, too fucking bad. You work a 9 to 5,
Right.
5 days a week. The DoorDash,
Hmm.
you can just be like, sorry, buddy.
Yeah. Not
Let
here for it today.
somebody
Have
else
fun.
pick it up. DoorDash isn't going to be hurt over it.
Totally. Yeah.
So
I would imagine that type of employment I mean, it is already on the rise. It will just continue to rise for sure.
yeah. Absolutely. But then there's also the whole because like over in Dothan, where is besides Montgomery, would arguably the best. Actually, I would argue that it is the best over here. It's not the capital of the state, but it's a big food city with a lot of restaurants. But it's
Hmm.
also got a lot of people that like I don't know. Have you heard about like the Pokemon 25th anniversary card thing they're doing at McDonald's?
I have not. I've seen a couple posts with McDonald's and Pokemon branding. I've not even dug deep enough to find out what it is, but now I know it's the 25th anniversary, so
Yes.
that
So
makes
what's
sense
happening?
now.
They've got these special hollow cards. You get one hollow starter,
Got
and
it.
then the others are just normal. So we're adults with money who grew up with Pokemon. We're
Right.
buying them all. So you'll have people that will be like, "Here's $100. I will take however many card packs that gets me." And then a 5-year-old's like, "I want Pokemon." And it's like, sorry, bitch. That
We're
40-year-old year
out.
old
Yeah.
bought all of them.
Yeah.
So they kind of like they shut that off. Like my
Hmm.
brother went to and he's like, I'll just get 5. I'll make up a reason why I need them. I'm trying to
Sure.
buy presents for kids or something. They're like, sorry, sweetheart, we're not even doing that. But I'll go to Dothan. They've got 3 or 4 McDonald's in the city. And they're like, oh yeah, no, buy as many as you want. So they're big enough to where they have the ability and the market for it, but they're
Right.
small enough to where the trends slowly make their way. They're not where the trends are set, they're where the trends are kind of developed once they're
Got it.
realized there is a trend to develop. So
Yeah.
when I started working DoorDash at the beginning of the pandemic, nobody was working DoorDash. Like I couldn't get enough hours. But then
Right.
once people started figuring out May, June, I it's like it was so saturated,
Oh yeah.
is super saturated. So that's what the fear is because while you do have that freedom and flexibility of like, let's work 4 10-hour days and then fuck off for the rest of the week, you could also be sitting there for 3 of those 10-hour days and make $20 when you're normally supposed to be
Right.
making 100, 200.
Yeah. It's impossible to predict, which is brutal.
Yeah.
Well,
So it's that weird trade off you have to give yourself for the you work 9 to 5, 5 days a week. You get rode up. Like if you quit a week for whatever reason, if it's like, unless like your mom died or something
sure. Sure.
unfortunate, you don't have a job anymore. Someone else will cover that. But you can take 5 days off from DoorDash, but you were having so much fun you forgot to schedule the next week. So there's no more blocks open. You
Right.
can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. You
that's
have to be
that's
really on
the
it.
new reality that again people are going to have fun with it, but they're not going to understand the new reality, and it's going to really hurt them while they learn that lesson.
Sure, but it also like it as a as the DoorDash company would have, or what they are currently figuring out. It's like that's like they're not legally. That's like a huge. You got people. You got departments of large companies whose job it is to remind their employees of what their employment structure is. You got HR departments who are like,
I,
making sure that their expectations are met, and like that's a whole thing that DoorDash doesn't even have to do.
oh
There's like,
yeah,
people are there's always going to be a market for people who want to do the job. We
yeah,
don't have to tell because you got a free backdoor out. Like you're done, walk out. Don't book a thing. It's fine. We don't care. But that's so
yeah.
much
And
less
you're
work for them. It's so much more efficient.
yeah, oh yeah,
So yeah, I
because
mean,
there's
I'm sure
always
they still have an HR department. It's probably just for like the the like office staff that keeps the app running,
oh
basically.
yeah. No, there's no HR department for your normal scrub driver. No, there's a
No,
robot that spits at you stuff you could look up yourself on the website.
exactly. Yeah, it's just yeah. The idea of what it means to be employed in 2020 is so freaking bizarre.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, and again, and it might be objectively better, but it's only going to get what I would say as worse because I don't know what the final product will be.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. And yeah, we can't possibly know. And like that's kind of almost the philosophy that drives so much of what I've been doing. Like, I think, yeah, even up to the music point, where it's like I can't possibly, and like in 2021, so many things are competing for our attention. We are so distracted and so drained of our attention energy by so much. So it's like I honestly, like, if I want to be productive and perform as a producer, as a content creator, as a um whatever my current role is, if I want to do that to the best of my ability, I almost like don't have the energy to worry about what that next phase is. And like obviously there's like wisdom that you need to have in terms of like planning yourself out and giving yourself that next step. But if I'm like if I'm obsessing over like I don't know what the next thing is and I can't get off of that, like you're wasting your energy. Like it's kind of like that idea of like what we were saying earlier with like just holding space. It's just like you're in that space, and this sounds so like kitschy and like almost preachy, but like it's like you're in that space that you're in right now. Like the decisions you made and the choices you have in front of you are like that's just kind of like you got here the way that you got here, and
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that. If you're hating on yourself for where you're at currently, like same thing as I said before, it's like let it motivate you or ditch that concern. Like at that
exactly.
point, it's
There's
just
nothing wrong with the situation you're in, and there's nothing wrong with being there unless you do nothing about getting yourself out of it.
yeah, if you don't let it teach you anything, that's the only thing that really makes even a
Yeah,
bad situation bad.
yeah,
Which like admittedly, that's coming from a white male in America that like my
yeah.
bad situation is so
Oh,
not even comparable to
nothing.
so many
No,
other situations for
nobody.
sure. But like that concept of like, hey, not to diminish the reality of a really bad situation that a lot of
Yeah,
people are in, not to discount or devalue that at all, because that's very real, very valid. But like that is a essentially that can be a it can be that first step, or it can be the cuffs on your on your wrists keeping you from doing
yeah.
anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like I remember talking to a guy where like, because my whole mentality has always been like, and it was a learned mentality from parental figures and people I looked up to. It's like
Sure.
a hustle's a hustle, a hustle. You do what you got to do to get to the place you want to be. And I see a lot of that reflected now. Like I see a lot of people like and it's not necessarily like the people who like rent out like revamp old ambulances and small buses into houses, which I mean
Mm-hmm.
that's a lifestyle choice and
Sure.
absolutely awesome. But like you'll have like somebody who's like, hey, did you know you could spend $6,000 at Lowe's on a shed, insulate that, throw a queen size bed and a TV, and until you have a house, that can be a house. There's a lot of people that don't want to lower themselves to that what they feel is lowering themselves. But
Totally.
it's and just like when I was in high school, I had somebody who was like, "So what do you do after high school?" It's like, "Oh, I work at McDonald's." It's like, I could never work at McDonald's. I'm like, "Why the fuck not? You've got 3 months, 3 bad months, and you'll be begging for a
Oh
job at
yeah.
McDonald's." So there is a lot, and again, it does, and I've said this before, and it does kind of play into that especially now that kind of white male attitude where we've had like a really good run of luck up till now to where a lot of the people who said that fit that description to where a lot of people that didn't fit that description they'd be like yeah no sure what's wrong with working McDonald's as long as you're working your way up it doesn't matter where you started from
Yeah.
but it's really weird and I think it's those type of people like I remember like hey you were talking about Amazon over in Seattle I remember the like it might have been like 2 or 3 years ago. Jeff Bezos, it's like Amazon.com. We sell books online. Ain't
Yeah.
that kind of weird? Everybody's like, that's stupid. There's a Barnes and Noble across the street. And he's
Mm-hmm.
got that kind of colored crayon kind of Amazon sign above his hand on desk.
Yeah.
And everybody's kind of laughing at him. And now he's just like money, just all the
Oh yeah.
money.
Yeah, and just, I mean, a lot of it's luck, a lot of it's privilege, a lot of it is opportunity, and really, really creative thinking. It's a lot of things for sure, but it ties into even what we were talking about consistency and just not doing nothing, even if it's not perfect. Where Amazon got launched as a book, an online bookseller, which is great, and I'm sure that was, I mean, knowing the extent to which it has grown, I'm I doubt that was the entire picture when it was started, but like it was a shadow of what it is now, and it just started. Like it was just like, oh, like we've got this idea, let's see where it leads. Totally, it's like, and I mean, creatively, that's 1000% the process that I operate under almost 100% of the time, which is just like, so for every single one of these 31 January jams this month, it was just a sense of like, I have no clue what's going to come out of this. I have absolutely no idea, but I'm just going to do something and see where it leads me. I'm going to just absolutely noodle around until I find something that catches my ear and just follow that thread as long as it goes. And 31 times it ended in a final product, which was great. I mean, there's as many or more threads that didn't get to the end. There's so many days. It was like, here's an idea, let's develop that. Okay, 3 hours later, well, that led nowhere. Let's start up a different thread. But that's the nature of successful businesses and artists and like all of these things. It's the people who are, I mean, I guess there are some people who are really lucky and just like, oh, let's try this, and they crush it. But like that's so infinitely small of a fraction of the total, pool of people who are doing this, whether that's podcasts or starting businesses or even like jobs or relationships or dating. Like you can apply this to everything, where it's just like the worst thing you could do is just to not don't be afraid to be bad. Don't be afraid to fail, because that's there. You just got yourself a free motivator for the next time around to like, oh, I learned a thing. I can apply that to what I am going to do next time.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I was just gonna say, like, and some people are wired, like, for me, I've noticed in myself, I'm like, I've internalized that quite a bit. And so when I fail, it's like an almost like surreal, like, oh, great, cool, I failed. This is awesome. That's not everybody. And some people like really need time to like absorb and process failure and be like, oh man, I really had hopes and expectations, especially when it comes to things that aren't as like, I say meaningless. It's not meaningless, but as like pithy as like a music jam. Like it's really easy for me to like, oh man, that sucked, but I learned X, Y, and Z about mixing and where I need to put my lights in my room to make this thing look cool. Great, that's awesome. I can bounce back from that pretty easy. But like some things with like even like really like heavy like long relationships that like don't last. Like there was expectation and weight and hopes and things that were like and it's okay to not bounce back from that. Like, and vice versa, it's okay if you're wired and it's like, oh man, like I really had a hope and dream that this thing was going to be great, and now all of my plans are gone. Man, that sucks. I'm going to try again. Good for you. And if you're the kind of person who cries because your lighting wasn't great for your January jam, like own it. It works both ways, but it's just figuring out what is like which person you are and then leveraging your existing human infrastructure, I guess.
Yeah. And to kind of double back on that relationship thing, like that, like, and this is more of a recent development for me as far as like things I've observed with people, friends, and people I know. Like a lot of that like relationship thing, like there's a lot of people that are like, I wouldn't call them failures, more as just like those threads that you work on for 3 hours. It's like, well, that didn't really go anywhere. It was fun while it lasted, but but a lot of people are just like, I'll put another hour or two into the thread, it'll go somewhere, something will happen.
Totally. Yeah, it's oh, what is that called? It's like spent cost fallacy, I think is what it's called.
That's like I think the Italians did it in World War II, where they tried to take over part of a country to rebuild the Roman Empire. It's
like, it was just like, oh man, we put so much into it at this point. It would devalue the effort we put in to stop now. And it's exactly what it's called. It's a fallacy. It's not true. It's a trick you play. It's ultimately it's because us as humans, we don't want to feel as if we have wasted something. Yeah. So it's really just us being too prideful to say, oh, that was a failure. It's like No, I'd rather make it worse and not say I was a failure. It's like, oh man, you could
Yeah.
own it with a smile on your face and learn from it and move forward, and you would have been better, months or years ago.
Yeah,
It's
I
like,
mean, of course, because of course you're going to have the sad parts, because of course it's going to be sad. But
totally.
I mean, it's like the worst month after a breakup or a divorce is infinitesimally better than 5 more years of progressively worse depression and
Absolutely. I mean,
anxiety.
and if you're really addressing the concept of failure correctly, the corresponding span of time after any failure also feels great with that
Yeah,
mentality. Like, oh man, that really bombed. Why did that bomb? Let's mourn it.
yeah.
Let's feel sad that it happened. But like, okay,
Let's work
that's
on.
information that I didn't have before, and now I have in this new direction. And so
Yeah.
yeah,
Because
it's
I
good.
remember for a sociology class where I was doing like people were talking because down here I'm in Alabama. I don't know if I've
Mhm.
really said that. So um, there was this, I believe this was in Tennessee, which is our northern neighbor.
Yep.
There was this old Johnny Cash movie where, and I think it was Johnny Cash. I'm confident enough to where not a billion people are going to see this to correct me on it. So I'll go ahead and say it with some confidence. It was a Johnny Cash movie where he married someone and then
Mhm.
they divorced, and then it was a scene in the movie. I don't know if it happened in real life, but it definitely could have, where she was shopping, and then I wouldn't say older, she was 30 at the time in the movie, and maybe the girl
Yeah.
was 45 to 50, and she walked up and she's like, the Bible said marriage meant forever. And it was like that whole, like, I was like, that's not her fault, like,
Yeah.
because that
There's
will not, I
totally.
mean, on top of the fear, and maybe not much in the North, but definitely back in the past,
I
maybe
mean,
50s
yeah.
or 60s, before like common law, like no fault marriages became like a thing.
Right.
But especially now down here, like if you marry a high school sweetheart, which happens a
Totally.
lot, and then like because you're a high schooler, you're a child, like myself, high schooler, and yourself as a high schooler, you would probably admit that person was
Absolutely.
idiot. Uh, like
Oh
punch
yeah.
him in the like sit.
Completely.
I would punch myself in the face, sit him down for 5 hours. Like this is what you need to do to change yourself from the
Oh,
piece of garbage
100%.
right now. But and then we expect this person to be ready for marriage, living off on their own. And I
Right.
mean, even in college, you're developing, and after college, you develop even to your final, and then you keep growing from then on out.
Hmm.
But to act like the person that you marry within that span, which uh, if you're not married after 26, people start looking at you kind of weird
Yeah.
down here. They're like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, what's wrong with you? Like, there must be something. But to like, and then even to like have a divorce behind that, that's like the ultimate sin, and it's just absolutely not true. Like,
Yeah, not at all. It's like
no, like,
it's just like anything. I mean, frankly, it's you even bring up the like talking about divorce and the stigma that's behind that. It's literally just that we don't as humans know how to deal with failure. And
or
so
change, like we were
or
talking about
change, yeah.
before.
No, 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 exactly.
It's like better the devil I know than the devil I don't know. It's like, yeah, sure, we fight or we scream, but I also have someone I can sleep to at night. I don't want to go back to sleeping in a bed by myself like a peasant. That's like no, like
But even the in the story that you mentioned with the movie that you brought up with the
Johnny
in the
Cash.
grocery store and the lady being like, you were supposed to stay married or whatever. It's like, yeah, even I mean, diving deep into her character, I guess, but like the only reason she's even responding that way is because she has a deep-seated fear of maybe it's the
Uh,
cost loss and or the
yeah,
fallacy that we were talking about, which is like, oh man, I sunk so many garbage years into my garbage marriage with my garbage husband that I have to suddenly validate that by telling other people who got out of it early that they're
and he's
wrong.
probably definitely cheating on me while I'm bitching at you. It's entirely possible.
It's just
Because
yeah, it's the people who are hating on other people for honestly being like, hey, I'm aware that I like if you're really owning a failure. And this is we were just talking about like divorce and stuff, but like even on you it's a dynamic you brought up about your friend on TikTok of having, all these people who are like, this is great. And then the one person's like, this is garbage. Like that dynamic, the people who are calling that out are really people who are just vocalizing the fact that they have issues with change and with failure. Because it's just
No,
like,
I
oh man, the
just for
reason
shit.
I need to call somebody else out for failing is because that somehow covers me, either other people seeing the failure or me having to deal with my own failure. It's
Yeah.
just like, oh man, there's so many other things you could do that would make yourself better than just
Yeah. And
yeah,
even with the friend, it was a private account with 0 followers and 0 videos. So
right.
it was literally someone's troll account they had on
Oh,
their phone
totally.
and when they got a replacement.
Yep.
So I mean, it wasn't even a valid response. It was just some 14-year
Totally.
old like, eat this motherfucker.
Right, exactly. It's like,
I lost
yeah.
Fortnite, so I'm mad
So
now.
I'm mad at this guy on TikTok.
Or it's that 50-year-old dude at the warehouse. It's like, how dare you try to live your dream? I
Oh
worked
yeah.
in this shithole for 20 years, and you have the audacity to come in here and passively tell me what you want to do as a small business owner.
Yeah.
No, you
It's
put
like
your years in here, and your children put their years in here, and we go ahead and suck the teat of capitalism, and we like it.
no one asked you to stay there, Earl. Come on.
Oh, oh my God. There, I've run into 5 of those guys. Like they're just, every day. Like in
Oh
this,
yeah.
he's like, I hate it here. It's the worst day every day. I have to
But god
wake up.
damn it, I can't leave or else it was all for nothing.
And I get, or not even that, but like I mean, definitely that to an extent. But it's also sometimes the best places that you work at. They'll offer the most pay, and I
Right.
mean, the minimum wage is 7.25. You're going to risk a $14, $15 an hour job to make like what happens if you can't get a
Right, yeah.
$13 an hour job? So I
Totally.
mean, it's even off of it, even going off the whole failure aspect. Like I mean, you can live with that if you go down from a 13 up to a 15. That's a great failure. That's a
Oh
fantastic
yeah.
failure. But some
Yeah.
people are just like, it's better than my granddad when he was 10 years old working in an iron mill and he lost his thumb because that shit happened too.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, in the 2021 equivalent still happens too, where it's like that's like welcome to I mean, yeah, welcome to capitalism, I guess, is kind of like that's the Seattleite in me. But
Yeah.
it's like it is what it's the well, any any financial theory has its ups and downs, and that is the down of capitalism, whereas the individual gets squashed in the cogs.
Oh,
That's just how it goes. That's the downside. And you have the huge upside of innovation and growth and freedom of market. Like there's a ton of pros, but the cons are also pretty bad too. But
yeah.
like like communism has the same things. Like, yeah, wouldn't it be great if like everyone had the same shot at everything? Like if everyone was on the same plane and nobody got neglected, wouldn't that be awesome? It's like, yeah, that would be awesome. That's a pretty great pro, but like the con is that like nobody's motivated to do anything either.
Yeah.
It's
Or the
like
people
yeah, it's
that
just
have
yeah,
the ability, the people that have the EQ and the IQ to try and promote and push through those values are probably them themselves sociopaths who will take advantage of the systems that they themselves put in place.
totally. Yeah, and yeah, like you were saying, it's just you're gonna have these pros and cons of both, or no, of
Yeah.
both of all. There's everything is gonna have its benefit and its detriment, and so it's trying to find out like, all right, do I like, can I handle the detriments here? Am I morally okay
Yeah.
with the worst happening here, knowing that I have the upsides of this,
Yeah, absolutely. It's a wild world we live in. I don't think any generation has maybe the 20s generations and maybe the civil rights generations. But I mean, them themselves are more of those broad generalized generational gaps. I mean, it's the 20s to the 70s and
Yep.
the 60s to now. I mean, those are pretty wide gaps, but I mean, we as our generation, I don't think any other generation has had quite such a rampant amount of growth, change, and the necessity for adaptability as we have.
No, not at all. And part of the reason of that is not to devalue the experiences of any other generations, but like
Absolutely
in
not.
uh information has never been easier to access ever. So we are totally, but we're more aware, or we have access to more information, so we can be more aware of all the things that are happening than ever before, and by an exponential factor for sure. And so like part of that is, I'm not saying that because we have access to all that information, that's what's causing us to have all of this change happen, but it definitely amplifies the amount of change that is because we can, in America we get XYZ that happened in the news, but by three clicks from our fingers, we can now figure out what the UK thinks about those three things that happened. What are their three things that happened today, and how did that? We can in a couple of seconds we can find out, and like part of that is a distinctly American privilege too, with the access to information that we have that some countries definitely don't. But as that grows and expands, that is becoming a much more global reality of just being able to find out what's happening with minimal expenditure on our part. Yeah, so it's absolutely. Like we're suddenly very aware of all these things that are happening, so that we have to process and see, okay, well, this is changing here. This is a lot of things are changing. We're just more aware of them now.
Yeah, absolutely. Like even now, like I mean, I have in-laws that live in Vietnam, and they will, like, whenever they message my wife, I mean, it's like, are you okay? Because we thought it was going to be bad. We're kind of used to like coronavirus variant, like SARS, bird flu.
Right.
Y'all are getting your asses beat. I thought y'all were the place to be, the top diggity dog. Like we've got like 50 deaths. Are you okay? Like, so, and even the friend I was telling you about, Christian Reeves with his podcast, like, I explained to him what QAnon was. Like, I got to like lighten his eyes die out. It's like, oh God, hey Jesus, my genealogical line decided not to go to that cesspool. It's like, because you're right. We've never had the access to information that we've had now, but we also have the ability to create false information to where now all that, because like a month ago, the capital of the U.S. was raided by crazy people, which is ironic. And I've said this before, I've never said on the podcast, but this is actually a perfect tangent for that. It is a class of people who are big into their voting, who they voted for. They felt that their votes were stolen and manipulated, who then raided the Capitol with firearms that they constantly vote against to protect, to support a president who then was cited by aides to say he did not like how it looked because all the people there looked poor, and he didn't like the association with poor people, who now, through a law that he signed by vandalizing federal property, monument building and such, are subject to a 10-year minimum of federal prison time that will then have their gun and voting rights stripped from them.
Yeah, the two things that drove you there are the things that are going to be taken away from you. Yeah.
Never has the more perfect irony suit just been like created out of nothing.
It's absolute insanity, but it speaks to like that dynamic of there's so much information that it is so hard to determine what information is true.
Yeah, because we've got the Pizzagate guy who's like, their children in the basement of this one pizza shop in Washington, or the Wayfair scandal where cabinets are selling for $10,000, but the cabinets are secretly children being sold by the deep state and Hillary Clinton, and then you have one raid where because that's the thing, child trafficking is real. It's super real. So you have one FBI raid where they're like, we got 30 kids, but 5 of them were abducted and the other ones were like missing children. And then all of a sudden QAnon gets this B12 shot to the like straight to the heart, and they're like, we fucking know it. We were right all along.
Yeah. It's just
so much to deal with, because you almost have to desensitize yourself to it.
Yeah. No, you do.
But you should. These are crazy people. Because we desensitized ourselves this entire year, and then we kind of laughed at them and forgot about them, and then they raided the Capitol.
Right. But even then, that even harkens back to the dynamic we're talking about, where it's a pro and a con for everything. We have so
Mm-hmm.
much information. There's so much at our disposal, but the mechanism that it takes to make that information widespread and accessible for everybody opens the door for people to spread disinformation, to have
Yeah.
even, I mean, even on a like broad spectrum, the having the platform to just say nothing, to just put out absolute meaningless content for no reason
Mm-hmm.
is great, because there's a, I mean, you can talk about TikTok, you just put out things that mean, I mean, there's a lot of creators on that app that are just absolutely brilliant and contributing
Oh yeah.
fantastic content, but some of them are like incredible people who are putting absolutely nothing meaningful in there, but it's
Yeah.
got the attention of everybody, and that's great. That the opportunity for that level of viewership is fantastic. But what it means is it just is, you're now just, the entire population of the world is just drowning in information and trying to sift through what's real and what's not. It's just, it's absolute. I mean, but that mechanism that makes it so hard to figure out is what's necessary to make it accessible to everybody. Where it's like,
Yeah.
man, would you rather not have that? Like, it begs the question, and I'm not even trying to answer the question, but it's like, yeah, would you rather have the ability for the truth to be out there for literally everybody to find it, but you're going to have a bunch of people who are throwing in a bunch of white noise too? It'd be like,
Yeah.
oh man, I would much rather on paper choose for the truth to be out there, to be found, and then just hope that everyone puts in the work to go find out what that truth is.
Yeah.
Because
And
ultimately, you're even talking about the stuff that happened at the Capitol. It's like, I don't think, and I don't know the people. I don't know all the tons of people that were there, but like for the most part, those are people who, like you mentioned, people who had hopes and dreams and convictions and morals and things that they valued that felt threatened. That
yeah.
is, that sentiment of something that I care about is being taken away from me or threatened is something that everybody in the world has felt at some point, right? It's just that those people didn't, either A, didn't do the work to find out whether the information they were getting was true, B, got absolutely like flat out lied to.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a number of factors of why they acted the way that they did on that information, and like, not trying to defend at all vandalism of a public government building. That's not what I'm trying to get at all. But in even huge intellectual or physical or relational or career wise failures, things that went wrong and didn't go the way that you wanted to, there's things that got you to that point, and not like ultimately it's that same thing that keeps coming up. Those people had feelings that everybody felt, we can all identify with. They just didn't use the information the same way that a lot of other people have.
Yeah. I mean, and even it's kind of hard because even if they did, even if they could search the information, you almost can't, because then it would be that zero fallacy concept he was talking about,
Totally.
where I just invested 6 months in this QAnon thing, and then my daughter just came to me with this detailed 3 month research that she did into why it's bullshit.
Right.
Um, am I going to listen to her, or am I going to and admit that 6 months of my life was a waste, or am I going to
Totally.
double down? Because this
Totally.
is the this was a concept I was talking to again, my friend Justin. I feel sorry for the people who show up to Trump rallies with like trying to like persuade people. I'm like, these people have sold off vacation days, because as a conservative, you probably have a job, like, or you probably have a 9 to 5. You're probably not a small business owner that like took time off because you could. Like, you're probably like a traditional worker,
Yep.
because you fit that demographic that he's trying to rile up. So you have most likely taken a vacation day. You have
Yep.
stolen, like if you live in Alabama, you've stolen a day that you could go to the beach in Panama City to like
Right.
have fun with your daughter, have fun with your
Right.
children and grandchildren. You've taken a day because you feel that this man's message is more important than that day of fun with your family.
Right.
You're not convincing that person of anything.
Totally. But
This, I mean,
it
no.
ultimately, like all of these fallacies and places where people go famously wrong, right, ultimately falls down to how you do or don't deal with failure or change. Where it's like, if you can get a healthy mindset around change, and well, categorize failure as a form of change, right? If you know how to healthily internalize and process change, you actively open a door to growth with every failure. And so once if you don't have a natural, and natural is maybe the wrong word to use there, if you don't have a healthy relationship with change, that is one of the byproducts there, which is why it's one of the super high philosophical reasons I love January so much, because I can't escape it within hours of starting if I'm lucky. Failure.
Yeah.
And it's just like you are face to face with failure constantly, and it beats it into your brain that that's okay. Especially
Yeah.
because like you get even getting to interact with you and be like, oh man, I think you messaged me after like my fifth or sixth one, I forget which one it was, but like, man, I'm starting to hit a rut. I'm like running out of my ideas. Like this is so frustrating. Like I'm getting absolutely exhausted with this. And then hearing somebody like, yo, this is sick. Can we get some more of this? It's like, okay, cool. Like all of these failures actually resulted in something that
Yeah.
somebody else resonated with. It's something that validates my effort up until this point, where I feel like it's like if we all just really were brave enough to fail a lot more, we would all grow a lot more. Where it's like we'd all find ourselves learning and being more considerate and thinking more outwardly and having better ideas and developing our own talents and our own skill sets and our own experiences. It's when you start being afraid of change or failure, whatever, interchangeable at this point. If you're afraid of that and you are avoiding that, that's just a way for you to cement yourself in the space that you're at. So if you don't like where you're at, or if you don't like where you're at for whatever reason it is, go find something to fail at real quick. Go find something that's going to like
Yeah.
change. And like a lot of times that's obviously terrifying. And some people are like I mentioned before, are more wired to like be gung ho about that and go out and try things and fail at things. But like I've never up until this point, I've not lived super long, but I've definitely gone through seasons where I was like, I'm kind of afraid of failing at that, so I'm not going to do it. And then I've had seasons where I'm like, I'm really afraid that I'm going to fail at that, but I'm going to look for ways that I can grow from that. And those ones are by far the most productive. Like those are the years and seasons of my life that I look back and I'm like, yeah, that was really good. Those were critical for making me who I am today. And the years where I was
Yeah.
like, oh man, I might not have failed as much that year, but like I really didn't grow that much either. And I didn't
No.
really get any closer to what I wanted to be.
Yeah. I mean, failure is absolutely a necessity to growth. Like, I mean, there's even like some psychological studies that indicate that there's like post-traumatic growth, like
Mm-hmm.
parts of your brain,
100%.
I think it was the concept behind Saw, where it's like you're probably gonna die, but if you live, oh, you're gonna be a new kind of person after that.
Yeah, for better or worse.
For better or worse. Yeah. I mean, because it is weird because like there's a lot of those people like that person that I was talking to that said that they would never lower themselves to work at McDonald's. It's like
Right.
you probably haven't been humbled by a very good failure.
Totally.
And
100%.
when you're handed that L and take it right across the face, you're gonna realize that it doesn't matter. Nothing
Totally.
matters, really.
Oh yeah. And like honestly, like find a philosophy, find a theology that doesn't work that in somehow in a really edifying way. Like it, things like either like nihilism, nothing matters, everything's an accident, nothing's everything's chance, like then cool. Then what does one more failure matter? Like go for it,
Exactly.
do it. And like even things that have like a really heavy weight on the impact that you have, like really, really like what's the word? I'm blanking on the word. It's escaping me. Like really, I keep wanting to say divert. It's not devout. That's the word. Like devout traditional Christianity is like, oh man, the weight of every sinner you ever come across is on your shoulders now, or like your salvation is so eternally important. You need to like, it's like okay, cool. Like even that sense in Christian, which I would say is a total misinterpretation of Christian theology, but that's another podcast, another day. Like the real sense is like, hey, like in Christian theology, like, hey, like the end game's covered, bro. Like your future is secure. Like what's happening next is like you're good to go. So take a chance, man. Like own
Yeah.
own where you're at now, because the thing is covered at the end. Like you can spin, and I say that like it's any theology can be spun. That's not the point I'm making, but like that reality is so foundational to who we are as humans that even in varying theologies or ideologies, there's this sense of like, so why not try though? Because the
Yeah.
worst thing that could happen is you learn something, you know?
Yeah. Oh, and no, you were, and I kind of saw the path you were trying to take with the spinning of theology. And yes, no, it absolutely can be spun because Joel Osteen makes no either.
So
So
totally.
believe evangelical Christianity can and is currently being spun.
You're
But even
kidding
with the
me.
aspect of even with the aspect of Christianity in the part of I am saved, I am secure, even without failure, Christianity could not exist because at the very beginning it is I am a sinner, I have
Totally.
failed, only God Himself can support. So you
The
need
literal
failure.
foundation of the religion, yeah, is
Yeah,
like,
it's
hey,
you are failure.
everybody didn't measure up. Means you're all good. Like,
Yeah, it's
that's the
like
whole point. Yeah.
exactly that. You have to work failure into absolutely everything, or you cannot grow.
Oh, totally.
Now, there's a lot of Christians that they go ahead and forget where they. It's kind of like you forgot the streets you came from, and you act like you're
Mm-hmm.
like you're bourgeoisie. It's like, nah, you cheated on your girlfriend in high school, buddy. It's not
Yeah, it's just
technically
like, yeah, like
adultery,
listen,
it's
yeah,
adultery.
it's one of my favorite musicians here in Seattle. Has like he's been really, really vocal. He grew up in a very, very Christian household and was like, the foundation of Christianity is just broken because it says that everybody is bad. And it's like, I understand why you would want to distance yourself if that was the experience that you had with the Christian faith, for sure. If you went through
Yeah,
your life and all you got from Christianity was them battering you with like, hey, you're bad. Yeah, I would say all the Christians you were going toe to toe with were probably not real great Christians.
yeah,
But I think
no,
like it really is like it's so funny to hear him talk about that, and then a lot of other people that I really respect who aren't even Christians are like, hey, like that same concept of like what Christianity would say is like, hey, we've all not measured up, and that is fine. In fact, it
yeah,
levels everybody. It means nobody's better than everybody. It means we're all in need of some external help. We all are at times. So let's all get that help,
mm,
which is great. But then you have people who don't even ascribe to that religion at all, who are like, oh yeah, man, like yeah, I've gotten real lucky, or I've done this, this, and that, and I've succeeded at this and all these different things, but like I'm no different than anybody else.
mhm,
And it's like
yeah,
that. The issue is not with the religion; it's with your interpretation of reality. Like
yeah,
you've essentially found what you wanted to hear, so that you and it. Wow, it really does tie back in though. Like those Christians who are pointing the finger and saying that you're bad, we're all like this is so bad. It's like, nah, you're just not willing to really deal with your own failure or your own change, to be like,
absolutely.
find that as good, and that will change your whole theology. It'll change the way that you look at other people who think and behave and act and look differently than you. It's just like it. If you're okay with failure, then essentially like you're okay with everybody, because everybody fails.
I mean, honestly, that really is like, if not the key, one of a definite set of keys to being a good person. It's just like
Totally.
realizing that you yourself can fail, and you probably have, and you probably would have to fail a very small amount of times to be exactly to that person that you're looking down on situation.
100%. Yeah. It's so funny. People
That's
just
like my
they love
like
to not be wrong. They love to not fail, even though it is so central to making everybody better.
like it's literally in human nature. Like I remember listening to a book where this what is it? It's a hunter gatherer society in the Amazon where they take
Okay.
this poisonous tuber and they grind it into a paste, like chew it up in their mouth, spit it out into a gourd, let it ferment, wash it, and then do like 100,000 things to it. And every step of the way, that starchy potato-esque tuber kills until the last time, where
When they
it's
got all the
their
steps right.
yeah, it's their staple food. Like
Right.
this thing
Yeah.
kills them every step of a 10-step process, more or less.
Yeah.
Kills every step of the way into the final step. if you don't think that they didn't figure that shit out without failure, then I mean,
how did they get there? How did they figure out the right recipe? Like
thousands of dead bodies.
Yep.
Just
Yeah.
just 100 grandmas. It's just like, well, I guess I might as well. I ain't gonna live long anyway.
This is yeah, like, or some brave young person being like, I found it. This is the thing that'll fix it.
And then it's like,
wasn't the thing.
Yeah, because I doubt they knew how to like rub something on their forearm and see if it turns red or not.
Oh,
Or maybe
sure.
they did. Maybe they did.
What are allergies?
Yeah, exactly.
Good God.
Man. So as far as your music making process goes, because that's what we brought you in on. Like we're literally an hour and a half into this.
We went so far away from that, but I love it.
Oh no, I was like, maybe we'll go off on a tangent or two, get an hour worth of your music in.
Here are 5 tangents that we can go off of.
Yes, absolutely. So what is the, because it doesn't look like you're in your studio right now, or at least to what I perceive through your TikToks. And I was hoping maybe you could like start like a baseline and like show us the process. But
let me see. I might need to reroute some things if I were to do that. Let me see if I can explain some things first, and see if that suffices rather than show and tell. I mentioned this at the very beginning, how like funky it is to make good audio gear work on Zoom calls and Skype. It's so funny. So I work for a company that does like a bunch of remote work, and so I'm always the odd one that actually has like a good mic in front of me, and everyone's like, oh cool, welcome to the podcast, welcome to our 9 a.m. staff meeting, cool guy with the mic, right? And I'm like, guys, this is my studio. It would take so much longer to unplug and pull everything out of my computer just to use the computer mic, so just let me have this. And like basically I would have like rerouting stuff. It's possible, like there's ways to get like live instrumentation straight in to Zoom calls or Skype or whatever.
I would like
it's funky, I promise you.
Because I barely had this idea, but I barely had this idea a day ago, like when we originally, before I postponed. But I mean, I'm gonna have you on again, so we'll just do that then. But go ahead and explain everybody, because you use a lot of digital instruments. I saw you a little bit with a guitar, but a lot of your stuff is digital. So how does that compare to traditional stringed or horned instruments in comparison to like accessibility, pitch changes, and like just all that kind of stuff, all the variables that plays into how you use your instruments?
Totally, yeah. The dynamic between digitized sounds and analog sounds is something that is really fun for me to play with. So I mean, with the exception of my own voice, and then the guitars that I use essentially, which I have my acoustic guitar and then my electric guitar, which are both over in their cases in the closet right now. But also, one step back, this actually is the exact room that I did all the TikToks in. It's just I never did this particular angle. It was all like I might try this, like the keyboards over on that side, the drum pad over on that side. So it's all the same space. It's just like from a weird angle that I never showed on TikTok.
And you also had this massive wash of RGB lighting in your studio as well.
You know, so this is God, I told myself I wasn't going to be a gear nerd, but here I am.
Do it. I'm literally trying to find out like what discount RGB-esque lightings and instrumentations I can use in my studio.
Literally, I have so many recommendations for you. So I'll grab this one up top. The main lights that are like illuminating me right now are these guys. Pull this down. So I've got a couple of these little quasar tubes that are just they're LED T8 width. They look like halogen or like neon tubes, and you can mount them in halogen like fixtures and they'll turn on, but they're LED lights. So I've got 2 daylight ones that are like cooler, and then the one that I have in my hand is a tungsten one, so it's a lot warmer.
Oh, okay.
So I use the tungsten one usually as like a background or to like get a kind of more of the yellow ones. But all of like the super bright colors were literally these guys.
Yep.
Little Aperture MC, tiny little guys. But they do like different colors of different like whites, similar like cold or warm, but then you can also like adjust them to do colors too,
I
which is
love
great.
it.
I have two of those and just kind of placed them in a couple different positions. A company called Falcon Eyes just put out a competitor to this that's half the cost, and it's
I'm
does
looking.
yeah, it's the I want to say it's the Falcon Eyes F7. Don't quote me on that though. If you looked at Falcon Eyes versus Aperture MC, then you'll find all of the responses on it. I
Yeah,
wish that one would have been out when these were out, because just the cost is. I think these are a touch brighter and they're a touch more like strongly built, so I could drop these from wherever and they'll still work. And I think the other ones are a little cheaper. But if it's a home studio and it's indoors, it's like
you're
they're
not
just
dropping.
yeah, it's not a big deal. But these things are incredible. I love them.
Oh yeah. I mean, because that's like 90% of TikTok right now is just like everybody with their RBG lighting rooms. It's just like
Yep.
my shit is super dynamic.
Totally. And like, yeah, most of the lights that you see on TikTok are all up on the corner. I'm trying to do this like backwards in my camera, but they're up
Oh,
around the
I
corners
love.
of the ceiling. And that's like, I didn't want to hang those. The power in this room is super funky. So those guys are just little battery powered dudes. You can plug them into like a USB-C charger and just like you can basically with your phone charger almost, and just they power up real quick. They last for a couple hours based on how bright they are. And I just kind of put them all over. I hung them. They've got little magnets on the back. So like, for some shots with drums, I like stuck them onto this mic stand and moved it around to like light the
Yes.
drums certain ways. It was really fun. It was fun like learning kind of how far I could push those and make it look good on camera.
Yeah. Because I mean, that's a really like really important like that aesthetic because and I mean even with the lightings you have now, like not the Falco, but it's like the Apple version of what that would be, I guess. Like
More or
I would
less, yeah.
the Falco would be like the Android. So I mean, and again, even with like Twitchers and TikToks, there's going to be a lot. Like maybe not now because it's like super new, but sooner or later there's going to be this like real superiority complex. It's like, oh, you've got the Falcos.
Oh, I mean,
It's like
there already is with most of any like YouTubers are notorious for the gold gear superiority thing. Like
yeah,
there's an entire host of people who are absolutely losing their minds right now because of a certain like a key light. I'm using those bars as my main light, but there's you can get the ones with, like the big domes and stuff that have like the nice diffusion fronts that are like really pretty. There's
yeah,
one, that same company that makes those little square guys. They made this light that was like they made it for sets like smaller TV sets that you could like pick up and move them really easy. And then YouTube just went crazy for it. They were like, "Oh my god, these lights would be perfect for doing YouTube because they're like bright enough. They're not so bright that it's too expensive to buy the light, but it's like really it's cool. We can get a cool film grade light." And they did, and it was this big thing. If you didn't have this light, oh my god, like you gotta get this light. It's so great, great, great. And that company literally just divided their brand into a like essentially film versus like a content creator one,
yeah.
and they
Your
made the
video
exact
L.
same light but without the like the aluminum metal frame, uh and with like plastic instead on a
Yeah,
couple of things. And it's
because
like
you're not
a
moving
no,
studios.
it's a quarter of the cost, and it's incredible light. It gets as bright or brighter, and same color quality. And then people are just immediately all the YouTubers, yeah, but it's not the same as this other one because it's like
It's aluminum.
literally just get off your horse. All of the changes that are better on the other one, you don't need. Like,
Well, no,
does
but
not change anything.
you honestly have to in that community have some type of superiority complex because the mass majority of your supporters are probably 15-year-olds and nobody wants to be making $1 million a year off of 15-year-olds.
I mean, I'd take $1 million
Oh yeah, yeah.
for 15-year-old.
Like because like, I remember there was a Logan Paul video, I think it was Logan Paul, and like someone came up and was like, well, yeah, you're hot shit, but all your supporters are preteens. And he was all offended. I'm like, the tobacco company would love all of their supporters to be preteens because that means
Yeah,
they carry on into adulthood.
right. It's just, yeah.
It
Like
doesn't.
don't yeah, who your market is. Why is that an issue? Like if you have a market. I mean, who your market
You have a
is
market.
matters if you're dealing an illegal product for that market,
Yeah,
but
it's
but
kind of weird.
that's
Like,
not the point that I was making.
yeah, you had old Logan Paul where he like faked a shotgun death as a high rise. It's like
There's so
that.
many videos, dude. There's so many cringy moments where you're just like, ooh,
It's bad. It's
yikes.
like, yeah. And then he's like, well, let's do T-shirts. And it's like, you do realize there's going to be massive amounts of credit card theft. It's a child. The credit. It's still credit card theft.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I don't know how we got to Logan Paul from my musical composition
I know.
process, but I love that it happened.
Like, do another 10-minute tangent, dude. You got to the music. Let's get back to the music.
We'll get back to the music. We're talking about like digital versus analog stuff.
Yes.
So yeah, my guitar and my electric guitar and my acoustic guitar and my voice are really the only. I'll even say I have the Korg Mini Log, that one silver synth that I used occasionally off to the side. Technically, I would qualify as an analog sound because it's something that's being played outside of a computer and then
Yeah.
being captured. Because I have a lot of synths that I use that were basically exist as code inside of my laptop, and I play notes to trigger that code. It's not a real instrument; it's code being played. But yeah, basically the process goes like I kind of tried, at least in January, I tried to do a different starting point every time, and sometimes I did that, and then sometimes I was like, actually, I really like the vibe I had starting yesterday. I'm going to do that again. It wasn't super consistent, but it was always this sense of I'm going to just play something that my ear likes. I'm going to just start playing until I find something I like, something that sparks an idea, and go from there. So like some days it was me turning on the keyboard, listening to a acoustic, like a grand piano type sound, and just thinking, okay, what would I do? Look, I've got this little melody in my head. I'll just play around and take a couple minutes to just imagine what would happen with that. Okay, cool. That's an idea. We could do that. We could do that. Play it out. Ah, it was a bad idea. Let's do something else. Let's grab the guitar. Mess around on that. Okay, this is kind of a cool progression like this. It was never the same. It was always this until I found one thing where almost all of them, I would say, of the 31 of them, probably about 25 of them went like this, where I would have that first idea and it would instantly go, okay, cool. I think I know what I want everything else to do around here. It would be like a good idea where it'd be like, okay, this melody is cool. I can do it in the verse here. I can flip it in the B section, and then I can change the instrumentation here. The drum should sound like this. The key should sound like this. And I get an idea from that initial one or two instruments where it's like, okay, I kind of like this. We're going to go from here and see. Oh, great. Now I can see it. We've got our heading. Let's go. And that looked, what instrument that was different every time. But the overall process is like, I'm just going to noodle around until I find something that puts the whole thing in perspective. And so for like 25 of those, it was really like maybe I'm messing around with like a vocal thing where I'm doing a kind of a choir type thing. And then I hit one chord and there I was like, oh, this would actually really work well with a super like kind of indie rock vibe. Okay, cool. I know how to do an indie rock vibe. I know what guitar tone I need. I know what bass sounds I need. I know what drum samples I need to grab. Let's now realize that thing. And then it was a lot of, does this sample meet that image in my head? No, it does not. Find a better one. Does this keys patch sound like the thing that I had in my head? No, it does not. Let's find another one. And then after that, that process happened pretty quick. And then it became, okay, now I got to get this all in video. So I got to either have the camera rolling when I play it right the first time or record it and then play it again while the sounds are happening for the camera, which was fun. That happened so inconsistently. Sometimes it would just be like, turn the camera on and see, and would catch it. And sometimes it'd be turn the camera on and I would turn it off. I'm not getting anything, but I'll take one more try at it. And then that's the time that I nail it. It's like, oh, could have just kept the camera on.
Yeah. I mean, I've never really got, because I've kind of like learned to play by ear with piano. So like I would hit a key and I'd be like, wait, isn't that the note? Isn't that the song to like Somewhere Over the Rainbow? And then you'd like, so it should be ba, 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 and then like and then you hit that flow state where you're able to like hit the melody on like each individual note on the finger pad, kind of and that's like the closest thing I've ever come to a musical-esque flow state. So whenever you get to it, because it sounds like you hit those a lot where you're like, I know where this needs to go. How, as someone who's never really experienced that, kind of describe, if you can, what that flow state feels like.
Okay, that's such a great question. It's like, Honestly, I'm trying to think if this actually tracks 1-to-1, but I'm pretty sure it does. It's like the moment where you're, and maybe all the single people will be so mad at this. Like if you're dating someone and you're just like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like, I think this could work. Like, we're just gonna kind of see where it goes. And then the moment where it hits you when you're dating someone and you're like, oh, I see how this could work. I see the idiosyncrasies with you match up with the idiosyncrasies with me. I could see this playing out. Like I kind of see where the pieces fit. I kind of see, and just kind of I guess for some people it's a longer process to get there, but we all reach that realization at some point. We're like, oh, this, and it works in reverse too. It's also that similar feeling where you realize, oh, this is not working.
Yeah.
It's just it kind of clicks at that one point, and that feeling, and that obviously is a very internal, inwardly focused process. Most people, I would imagine, it's very internal. It's happening in your mind's eye internally. This feels a lot more externally, where it's like I have this sense where I'm playing a melody or a chord progression or some sounds in order, and it's kind of like this, oh, I see how these things interact, and I just need to go and reproduce this. Whereas in a relationship type scenario, it's like, oh, I see how this could work, and now I just gotta not screw this up.
Yeah. I think I had that when I was 17 in a relationship. And like, you know how like in high school you're sitting, it's like, what are we gonna do? We get adult and we get married. And like I remember this one thing where like, so it was when we took the ASVAB, the military standardized testing.
Yeah.
And so you know where it recommends like the job positions that the military thinks you'd be good at based off of the aptitude that you gave them. I believe my number one was aerospace engineering, which I am in no way, shape, or form anywhere confident with my intelligence enough to send a rocket anywhere besides the ground. But it was like, yeah, sure, try aerospace. And I was like, okay, cool, let's run with that. And we were just fucking around. And I think she wanted to do cancer research.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just sitting there. It's like, well, where's one of the bigger civilian places? And I think it was someplace in Florida. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, oh, here's a place in Florida. She's like, oh, that's cool. I got one too. And it was the same city. So all of a sudden, the next 30 minutes became, there's this location where both of these jobs that we want to pursue have some of the better, if not top 5, top 10 locations in this one city, and it's this quaint small little town. And it like time kind of froze for a little bit.
That description is like exactly how it feels musically. So yeah, the players are different in that scenario, but that feeling is exactly what that's like. It's sudden clarity of like, oh, I see the possibilities. All I have to now it just is waiting to be played out.
Yeah, and then you could have like one drunk friend come over and be like, ah, and then that whole 30 minutes is like, wait, and you like wake up.
Yeah, it's the reason why so many musicians end up just disappearing for periods of time, because it's just like I had the vision, I had the idea, I had the clarity, and now I can't risk losing it.
Yeah, Bobby can't come in. It's like, let's smoke weed.
You're just like, no, I gotta secure my future. Dang it.
Exactly. So that's real. I'm real envious of that, because I always would like you know that movie. What was that movie with Riley and the Emotions? Like in the core memory.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm so mad that I can't think of this. I know that the character's name, the lead, is Joy, and it's all the emotions. It's
So
no, this is good. That's what does it to me, is that I can't remember that.
Another 2-minute tangent of like figure it out. If we gotta look it up on phones, I know what I'm using mine for. You kind of hold the responsibility there.
I'm pulling it up because I know I'm not going to sleep tonight if I can't think of it.
Yeah, no, I'm saying at this. I'm trying my damnedest. Fuck, what is it? Joy, feeling, love, hope,
Inside
respect.
Out. I'm an absolute idiot. It's Inside Out.
I'm trying to run off possible name combinations. I was never Inside Out of that.
You know what did it to me though? It's because Soul just came out, and so that's where my brain went. The aesthetics are a little similar, so I kept thinking Soul's like, I know it's not that, but my brain, it's fine. I'm just creating excuses at this point. Anyway, like Inside Out, what you're saying.
Yeah, No. I want to go off Soul for just a second. I want to chill with that kid. Like, what was his name? Like 26. I want to chill with
for
him
sure,
so
though. I want to
bad.
hang for real.
Yeah. So the bad thing at the end of that movie, and I swear to God, I'll end this tangent right here. When it looked going back down into Earth, it kind of looked like he was heading to Russia. So that is a horrible
Just a
place.
slight geographical error there, but it's fine. We'll forgive it.
Yeah, no, because like let's just run off the possibility that's where he's being sent, and because what it looks like is the souls are created and then they get their little merit badges and then they're sent to Earth with what I would assume are inclinations to those little badges they earn because that's how they decide. So could it be said that that person or not 26 was able to, if not completely remember all the information he presently held? If that was so, if he was like had the inclinations and the ability to open up and understand it better and quicker because he already had that knowledge in his pre-life,
right?
Russia would be the absolute worst place for him to be sent as a child.
Current day, yeah.
Yeah. But back to the Inside Out thing.
Yeah.
I kind of feel that that experience was kind of one of those like core emotions, and I don't know if that's just because it's what had changed. Because looking at it, it doesn't really define who I am, but it was one of those memories that I can look back on as just like that was such a incredible experience that I can just daydream on. And for someone like you to just walk up and tell me that you, for the 25 days in the month of January, had that experience for 25 days making a musical piece, kind of pisses me off a bit.
Well, so what I didn't say.
I had this one experience as a child that kind of shaped what I felt and saw as a life-changing moment and like relationship threshold. And you're just like, oh yeah, that's the time knife. I've done like multiple mushroom trips, so I know what that. You don't have to explain to me what the time
also why
is.
so many musicians are absolutely so insane, because they deal with the highest of highs and the lowest of lows then, because you're constantly chasing that feeling. And then when you don't, like that's the downside, is like I've failed at getting that with the sole intent of getting that emotion and that experience. I've failed at getting that vastly more times than I have succeeded at it. So it really is like a man, like and even like I talked about it on my Instagram versions of all of those posts. I talked a lot more because that's the format. TikTok doesn't let you even barely fit in all the hashtags that you want to fit in, let alone an actual caption telling about it. But the like on a lot of the Instagram posts I was saying and talking a lot about like how like even getting to the point where I was inspired was great, but like I burned through 5 ideas and wasted 5 hours trying to get this thing. It was so frustrating. And like it is, I would say it's cool. It's cool that I have that emotion every now and again, and that I can like capture that moment and kind of like see some things that don't exist yet, and like just see kind of the couple steps that need to be taken to realize it. But it's also absolutely paralyzing at times when I actually shoot for that and then I can't. Where it's just like I have to deal with this whole complex constantly of like, well, I literally just got this yesterday and I can't do it again today, and I can't reproduce this, and I can't capture that thing. So it's so inconsistent, you can't really count on it. The only thing you can do is just open yourself up again to it and hope that it's going to work this time, and not be afraid, to the extent that you can, to not be afraid at failing to actually find that inspiration and get there, which is really cool when it works and really stretches you when it doesn't.
Yeah. So I might want to rescind that former comment, because I don't think I could handle going through like like just off of my aspect of like the relationship side. Imagine having a relationship and everything figures out, but then she's like Florida, the perfect place, but I'm allergic to seafood.
Yep.
So that could be like kind of like the equivalent there, like everything's perfectly falling into place, and then but I have a deadly seafood allergy, and
I
I
just hate
might
musicians. Yeah, I just hate music. It's like,
no, I hate music. Like it's like Mardi Gras. It would be fantastic. It's like, yeah, no, but I'm allergic to polyester beads.
well,
Yeah.
get as far away from there as you can.
Yeah, that would be horrible.
That'd be rough.
So when you have that kind of flow state,
Yeah.
um, and I would assume there is that kind of like time standstills.
Yep.
Do you ever? Is it always a this is it, it's perfect, or is it more of a I cannot possibly stand to devote any more time to this because either I don't have the time, or if I do, I will kind of pervert the original inspiration into some unholy amalgamation of what it was.
So yeah, not to heap on reasons you definitely don't want to have this scenario in your life. uh, yeah, that's a constant dynamic that I deal with, and it's one of the chief reasons why I even started doing January in the beginning, was because I was so reverent of this vision, of this idea, or this clarity. It was just like, oh, I can't pervert it. I can't not. I have to just keep figuring it out until I nail it, and that just so regularly turned into me taking the enjoyment and the passion and the spark of what I'm doing out of it, where it's just like, oh, now it's just grueling to try so many times to realize this thing perfectly and fail at it, which again, learned a lot along the way and it was super valuable. But to find myself constantly and routinely met with that disappointment became very quickly a like indicator that I was doing something wrong. Where I was like, okay, if I'm really trying and I'm just still getting frustrated, maybe that's not the point. Let's exercise in a way that you need to just you don't have any choice but to let go of that. And so this is right around the time where my roommate was like, hey, I'm doing this thing. Or I literally was up, it was probably January 2nd or 3rd. I was just getting back from Christmas break and he's like up just like making, I mean, it's modular synths. You should, if you haven't looked it up, you should go look some of it up because some of it is, it's gnarly. The musician in me gets super glassy eyed thinking about it because there's no limits on it. Anything you can imagine and many things that you can't imagine come out of that process, which is fantastic. It's an inspiration machine. Um, I still can't wrap my head around half of it, but I hear these noises coming out of my roommate's room. And I roll over and say, oh, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm doing my January thing. January thing, what's that? He told me that. I was like, oh my God, this is the thing that I need to do. This is that thing for me where I can just say, I have to do it in a day. I only have a day. So at the end of the day, I have no choice but to put up an unfinished thing. So then the priority is not to make it perfect. It's to finish the things that need to be finished so that I have a product. And that breeds efficiency. It breeds value analysis of just like how worth it is it. Like I could spend the next 4 hours really fine tuning the synth sound to get exactly the texture I want, but that's not going to serve even the product. It's not going to serve anything but itself at that point. So let's focus on something. Can it be close enough? Is this going to work as it is? Sure. If I have extra time, I can come back for it. Let's prioritize. And then that process gets better and better the more you do it. And now it's been like, it got to this year where I'm like, what am I going to do different this year? Like, I feel like I could do one a day, no big deal for music. That's great. And like, that's worth it in and of itself. But I want to try something that like stretches me and develops. And as I've been doing video all year because of the pandemic, it's been like, oh man, I should do that with my own stuff. I've been doing videos for work and for freelance and for all these other people. I've never done any video content of myself yet. So I should try that. And so I got to do the music stuff I'm pumped about. This is by far my favorite year of music that I've done. It's the most diverse in terms of styles and textures and chords and even my own like performance areas. I've done things that I've never done. It was really cool and rewarding in that way. But I'm most proud of how much I learned and how much I absolutely bombed with some video stuff. Like some of the shots that I got were horrible. Some of the lighting I used was abysmal, and using certain color choices and things, and like adjusting frame rates at the wrong time and forgetting to, change the ISO or switching between different lenses at the wrong place and like leaving things on and open and like trying to hide some of those lights and keep it obvious, not obvious that I was using it in certain places. And looking back now, I'm like, this is literally sitting out on my desk. Everyone can see that I'm using this light. It's just like all of these things that I look back now. It's like, oh man, I'm a better video person than I was when I started this now, by a far larger factor than I'm a better musician after this month. Not to say that the music wasn't good and that I didn't learn and develop, but like the thing that I sucked at the most saw the best development. I'm like, pumped that I was able to do that with something that wasn't music. And the music's cool, and I'm going to keep working on that and developing some of that stuff. I'll probably end up taking the top 5 to 10 jams from January and actually like really fleshing them out into full songs, and then put that out as like a fun little thing so people can hear what like the rest of that would have sounded like as a song. But
oh yeah, you can definitely put that out as an EP. I think there's now like a girl. I think I can't remember her name because I suck at names.
Right.
But I remember the name of her song. It's Preacher's Child. You might have seen it somewhere on TikTok. She is a LGBTQ Christian artist.
I'm gonna look this person up.
Yeah,
Preacher's Child is
Preacher's Child. I think she actually hit #1 on the Christian records.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about now. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a lot of that stuff is like, I mean, TikTok can definitely do it, and I mean, I'm not going to say it was all TikTok and none of her skill, but it was definitely a combination of the two.
Oh, totally. But that's also like that's any musician who's ever gotten to the top of any chart has always been some level of musicianship and then some level of happenstance and exposure and relationships and networks, and like that's just the name of the game. That's just how that goes. And someone like even like the super mega hit right now with Olivia Rodrigo with Driver's License has been like that. It's like fantastic song, great. It's but like
really, I've listened to it about 3 times. Like and it might just be like because I like kind of like the anime opening, like super hype kind of like the tracks I sent you. It's a good song. It's got a lot of emotion and like kind of like it's got it in it, but it didn't really like whenever I heard it's like it's broken record after record. I was like, really?
Totally. But that's the thing. So it's what I will say about the song, it is a beautifully written collection of lyrics. The lyrics in it are really it's a absolutely, I almost said absolutely breathtaking, like a freaking music critic. But no, like the ability to write something that is so universally understood, but also universally accessible. So it's something that everyone has felt, everyone feels.
Yeah.
Written by someone who has had so little life experience, but it's so relatable. It's familiar without being too predictable. It satisfies as many expectations as it subverts. So like there's things that are surprising about it. There are things that I'm like, I expect it, which that's always the thing with music and art is you, with every like leap you take in making it like more heady and intellectual and clever, you alienate more of your audience. And so it's this constant push and pull of like, you have to create expectations and then calculatedly either fulfill them or subvert them in a way that works. And I feel the song manages that really, really well, so that I have no problem believing that it got wildly famous. Plus you put the artist smack dab in the middle of the prime demographic of users on that app, and now you get with an app that has been breaking numbers records since its inception. So like that, the all of those stacked on top of each other, it's like, well, of course this song is breaking records because it has all of the necessary things. But even that is an example of why like consistency and exposing yourself to failure and developing is like that girl. So Olivia too, she's incredible. She's a great songwriter. She's a great vocalist, but like she also knows a lot of like people with a lot of exposure and following and network. And so it's like her preparation to be musical enough at this time and to have developed her social existence with those people. And like, it's not that it's like, oh, she didn't earn this or anything. No, she absolutely earned this. It's a good song and she knows the right people and she put it all together. But that's not a like, oh, well, she had this opportunity that other people didn't. She didn't earn it. It's like, no, like you just haven't exercised the muscles and put yourself into the position so that when the door opens for you, you can walk through it. And like, that's been the heart of January for me, but also just being creative in general is like, I'm not necessarily out here chasing producing music as like that's my only goal. It's like, this is one of the things I really enjoy doing and I would love to do that for the rest of my life and be paid for it. And if that door opens, I need to be ready, and so I need to like develop that and do that regularly. And it's true of anything. It's true, like we brought up relationships as an analog for creativity, but like that's the same thing with relationships. Like you can prepare yourself, you can read a lot, you can better yourself, but like you can end up with the right person luckily very early, or you might have to absolutely struggle through relationships for years and years and years. But like the thing is that when the right opportunity opens up and you aren't prepared, that's a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
And so you have to constantly be in shape almost. if for the opportunity that you're chasing, it's not so much that you have to manufacture your door opening. It's just exercise the muscles that it's going to take to become the person who can fulfill that need. And then when the door opens, just walk through.
Yeah, absolutely. Like as you explained that, and because I kind of wanted to compare it to a Taylor Swift song as like the young female, like
Totally.
insightful artist, but her song is less of a bop as far as like the actual music behind it, but lyrically it's written like a person with a master's in English wrote the lyrics.
Totally.
It's kind of like what I said right at the beginning. It kind of does sound like a very masterfully written poem put to song.
Totally. And like that's what's great. And I think even beyond that, I would say it's written like it's written very, very well, but it's also written very honestly. Like I read that and I just go, oh yeah, of course this is somebody who's under 20 who wrote this. Like I could never write that song now.
Yeah.
I absolutely could not. If I did, it would come across exactly like it is, like a 26-year-old trying to write a song like he's 17 again. Like that's going to come off wrong. That's not maybe it's the vibe. I don't know. I've not done it. You can count on me not doing it, but that's like, but to be so honest and so like genuinely yourself, and then to have the quality that is it my style of music? Not particularly. Like I don't think I'm going to be spinning that for the next year, but like I can absolutely recognize the craftsmanship that's there. It's like, I mean, and even like other things too, it's like I probably revere some musicians who I like don't barely listen to because I only can listen to them in a certain space. It's that same attitude toward but music specifically, but creativity in general, which is like, hey, great art is really, really intrinsically valuable, even if it's not the thing that gets me going. I can look at something and be like, oh man, like that was really good for what that is. I can like I don't listen to, and this is the most Pacific Northwest thing that I've ever said. I don't listen to a lot of country, but like but when good country comes on and there are good things, even some country songs that aren't necessarily great but have elements that are really good musically, it's like, oh man, I routinely get people who are like, wait, you like this? I'm like, not particularly, but the guitar line's sick. The vocalist is singing really, really well. The lyrics on this is like absolutely like pristine for that genre. Like there's an intrinsic value to doing that art well, even if it's not your thing. And like that song specifically, Driver's License, is not like, I don't think it's my favorite thing ever. It's not going to be on my Spotify playlists for just about anything, but I listen to it. It's like, oh yeah, totally. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah. But I mean, at the same time, there's people like, there's not a person in this country that wouldn't turn on 9 to 5 by Dolly Parton and just absolutely just, ow.
Not anymore. Not after it's been all over TikTok.
Yeah, no. No, it's still like, I mean, you would open up to the Love Guru and he opens up with 9 to 5 by Dolly Parton. It's like, all right, here we go. Let's go.
Here we go. No, it's true. There's definitely some songs like that. 9 to 5 is one. Oh, there's so many songs that just are timeless that you're always gonna.
Oh, it's all
always gonna be bops.
Jolene, 9 to 5. It's all Dolly Parton. Everybody else, it's like it's it's weird. Like I mean, there's even some people now with like this Morgan Wallace fiasco. I'm like, no, it's not even that good. Like it's like and again, it's like that chick. I don't want to say chick, but chick that was fired from The Mandalorian. It's like, is it because good, or is it because they didn't have a good enough reason to let him go?
That's just a perfect storm of both in that scenario.
Yeah, I was like, because I listened to some of his stuff just because, like, because like I heard like after his whole fiasco and his rating, like not his ratings, but his like sales like quadrupled in like I mean, just quadrupled in number. And I'm like,
Right.
is it really that good, or is it just people trying to feel like they need to stand beside? Because I read into it more, and apparently he had another fiasco earlier where he was like making out with random college students in Auburn during the pandemic. I was like, oh, so it's not that you were just drunk. You're just not a decent person at a base level.
Yeah, which that even brings up a totally different dynamic of certain like personalities in high profile, in
Yeah.
like the high visibility lines of work too. It's just like it's in a whole like it's a dynamic of attraction that's it's a whole thing. You can do a whole podcast just on that.
Oh my God, right. We don't even like we've had our hour and 30-minute tangent. I'm trying my damnedest to stay
Oh yeah.
as close to music as possible. So Seattle, I mean, there's a couple of places. There's New York, there's LA, there's Seattle, and there's Nashville. Those are like what I would this is coming from a completely uneducated stance, but that's what I would kind of like those are music capitals, especially of this country.
Yeah, in
I would
America for sure.
these are if in America, those are definite music capitals. To your knowledge, what are the differences between like obviously Nashville is country music, LA is more of like kind of like the Katy Perry pop music where you can also bleed into like acting roles and stuff like
Sure.
that. Um, so I guess as far as New York and Seattle, what separates them from the others as like what makes them special in the music world?
So the way that I've always kind of experienced this dynamic is of those four major cities, and there's so much ebb and flow to all of this too. But like I know like there's several cities across the U.S. that kind of like almost compete, and for seasons will jump in and jump out. And Seattle very frequently nearly drops out of the national conversation for music. But the way that in my experience, and keep in mind this is someone as coming from someone who's lived on the West Coast for like their entire life, so like me seeing Seattle as a major music city is definitely colored by the fact that I've lived on the West Coast. There are some people who probably live on the East Coast who'd be like, Seattle a music city? Absolutely not. And they would have plenty of reason to say that. But in my experience as a West Coast boy, like I am, it's always seemed like there's a triangle and then Nashville is the exception. It just is its own thing. It's out on its own island where it is not just country at all, but it is definitely, I would even say it's analog music where
Yeah,
it's musicians on a stage playing their instruments for an audience.
yeah.
Whereas LA, Seattle, New York, there's several other cities that like I was going to kind of come and go and get pulled into the conversation and out of the conversation. But like those three have a very distinctive music culture that is not contingent on having venues, where there are people who like venues are obviously part of the birth of bands and artists and all that stuff for sure, but it's not hinged on it, where there are plenty of people who just put out music from their basement and that it's the music by itself. That being said, if there's a triangle with one of those cities at every end, and the spectrum between them will describes a dynamic that exists between those two cities. So you've got Seattle, which I would define as the DIY city. You have LA, which is the uh, like numbers output oriented city.
Mhm.
And then you have New York, which is very much the artistic integrity city. And so you get
In what way? In what way?
so comparing the two cities that are on whatever end, right? You have Seattle and LA share the sense of um, individual uh, input and stake in your own music. So people who are doing music professionally in LA and Seattle are very individualized, very focused on their idea being expressed, put outward. Whereas in contrast, New York would be very interested in making the art happen regardless of who is involved, even if it means they're not involved.
Oh, okay. So it'd be more of a songwriter writes a song.
Yeah, and that also bleeds into the methodology of how you put out your music and how you play your music and all that. You have a lot of musicians in New York who never actually performed their own music.
Yeah.
Whereas the vast majority of musicians in LA and Seattle are the ones performing their own music.
Yes.
Also on the other side, so DIY, where Seattle is the island in this case, right? The DIY side, you have LA and New York who are very, very, very focused on the production. So how many people you're reaching, the numbers, what you're into. And LA is the most of those for sure. But they're way more focused on what you've done, what you can do for them. Whereas Seattle is very much like, no, man, if you're singing to nobody, you're still doing it. Like you're doing it yourself, you're putting it out, and that's valid. That's art. You're doing it. That's viewed as a success. Whereas doing, playing shows for 2 people at a bar in New York and LA is seen as a failure.
Yeah.
Right. And so in Seattle, I don't know if it's necessarily lucrative at all, but it's definitely seen by the artists in Seattle as like, you're doing your art. That's fine. That's a dynamic that exists there. LA is, now take the dynamic that I was just saying about numbers, and where LA is on the island is it almost doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter how artful you are. If you don't have a following, you're going to have a really hard time. If you're not selling out venues, if you're not doing crazy numbers of merch and streams and all that, people don't give you the time of day.
Yeah.
And then in New York, you have this sense of like where it's the like artistic integrity thing. You got people who just absolutely like, you get your niche people who are so pushed on like peddling their genre and their style, and they're all out. And the downside is you get these people who are just really abrasive and really tough to work with. Whereas in LA and Seattle, everyone's kind of chill and relaxed, and you get that West Coast kind of mellow vibe where everyone's just like, oh, it's like, it's not really, you got plenty of active musicians who are getting praise and being like, I don't know, man, this isn't necessarily the genre that I like super love, but I'm like super into it. I'm doing some great work and I'm enjoying doing what I'm doing. Whereas if you were in New York trying to put out music that you didn't yourself believe in, people would be like, oh, you're a sellout, get out of here.
Oh, okay.
So it's this weird dynamic where they all kind of share some things, but they also kind of have things that like kind of alienate them a bit. But the thing in Seattle, the big thing is like in LA and New York, you need money and streams and views and exposure and networking to really, really hit it. Whereas in Seattle, you can really kind of make your own way and really just kind of do the work and play the shows and get noticed by the right people at the right time. You've really done it yourself, which is great. It fosters a lot of really cool. It makes Seattle a great place to be from because you can really organically grow your following and your numbers. So when you go down to LA or New York, you can be like, oh yeah, I've got this following that are up in Seattle, and I have these numbers that I generated, where it'd be really hard to just scrape that from nothing in LA or New York.
Yeah, because I feel like everybody, like every artist, I feel, because like LA is the place where you move to. Like, right. Let's say in a fantasy universe, like this podcast gets big.
Sure.
I would almost be expected to move to LA.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
or at least get on a network like that is based in LA.
Yeah. What? No, I'm not even gonna do that now. Fuck that. Like, there's too many. Like, I mean, maybe in the 90s, early 2000s, 2010s. Yeah, sure. I'd probably sign on to a network. Like, I plan like, and it might keep me at under $1 million, under 100,000, whatever. Like, there's too many horror stories of like people selling their stuff. Like, I mean, even like with like some of the bigger musicians, like Prince, like he became the artist formerly known as, because they're like, no, we own your name too.
Totally. I mean, yeah, in recent memory, that's Taylor Swift too.
Yeah. Oh my God, that whole fiasco.
Yeah.
And that dude ended up selling the music to a company, and then the company got pressured by social media to like.
Yeah, which like honestly, that's one of the weirdest scenarios too, because I feel. Honestly, I don't feel like, and this is maybe it's a hot take, maybe not. It's a product of the social hierarchy that we find ourselves in America that I don't think under the current like rules of our society, nobody did anything wrong. Nobody is at fault in terms of what we've all been conditioned to think about
Okay.
pushing your self-interest and making sure to take opportunities when they're given to you. So like, obviously Taylor is an up and coming musician. She signed a label because that's what you do. Probably didn't understand the full ramifications of what that would mean for albums and albums down. Totally. It's like, and there's nothing wrong in that. She's not at fault for that. But at the same time, the record label is now being super clingy, and but they have to, because artists are so unpredictable, and they need to make sure that they have, like, they're behaving in a way that is completely understandable as the owner of that. And then when the music actually became purchasable, you have a high profile producer like Scooter who's like, this is available, I can buy this and I would have this much value added. How can I not do this? This is crazy. Like, it's not that anyone is like a moral failure for doing what they did. It's just like, all we wanted was for one person in that scenario to just go a little bit and take the slightly high road, but everyone's conditioned to think that somebody else is the bad guy. And it's like, no one's the bad guy really, except for like society. And you can't cancel society.
Think this as acceptable. Like if an alien race came out from the stars, like a perfect utopian civilization, they would be like, that dude is an asshole. He needs to be put on trial, put in jail. But everybody's like, no, that's the industry. That's
the rules that we all subscribed to when we entered into the society. It's like, is it regrettable? Is it a bummer for some of the people involved at some points? Yeah, totally, absolutely. No one's saying that Taylor's plight in that scenario wasn't horrible and terrifying and so devaluing in a lot of ways. For sure, that was awful. But it's also like, everyone's trying to blame that suddenly on Scooter, who's just the one who's like, I don't know, man, I saw an opportunity to buy some really valuable stuff, I just jumped on it, man. Like, I'm definitely in a weird camp there where I, like, all the people that I know who are super team Taylor hate me for not hating Scooter, but then I know a lot of people who are in that world with Scooter and his crew and who are just like, man, people don't understand what really happened here. And it's like,
that's the thing, we don't really know what happened.
No, that's the thing. And back to what we were talking about with like how hard it is to discern real information from white noise. It's just like, we can't, like, unless you were in the room where it happened, like, you don't really know.
No idea. Like, and that's again kind of like with Britney Spears. Like, I think I saw where she just got, like, she's made it. Britney's free. No more Morse code messages through Instagram videos.
That whole scenario is wild. Another thing you could do an entire podcast on.
Dude, the artists that paved the way, Michael Jackson, Taylor Swift, Prince, Elvis, the Beatles to some extent, Queen, those poor guys got fucked at every avenue. Damn.
Yeah.
I think Dave Chappelle just got back Chappelle Show from Paramount.
Yeah. I think you're right. But it's also, but it's even that same dynamic that you're talking about on, like, my end, talking about like, oh, like, we should, like, chasing that feeling of like composing. I could have that every day. That's crazy. I've had this once in my life. It's like, man, we look at those issues that, like, I mean, these people got like used versus what they were worth. But also, like, they got, like, some of those people, their only dream was just to play music in front of people, and they got to do that till the day they died. And that was like, and that's like a win in their book. And like, and that's not to condone at all their labels absolutely screwing them over, for sure. That's horrible too. But like, there are wins and losses that we have absolutely no idea of in that scenario, that many of them, like, if I, even like what I'm talking about with all the stuff on music and feeling really pumped when I get it and then really bummed when I don't. If you asked me if that was like on paper, it's like, hey, like, you can get that every day, but you might just, like, you're gonna have a lot of really frustrating moments of trying to get that feeling. Like, I'd be like, sure, bet, sign me up. And many people would be like, absolutely not. I'm not equipped for that level of regular routine disappointment. Like, I can't handle that. And it's like, that's totally fair. That's why I decided to do all this, and I can, and why other people decided to do other things that I could never do. And like, to some degree, those musicians who are timeless and legendary are all at some level were like, I knew to some extent what I was getting into, and
I just didn't expect to be this bad.
Totally, yeah, and again, not excusing any atrocities that have happened, obviously not, but like, that's when you are in a creative field, and even a non-creative field, anything that's uncertain, we enter into unknowingly. It's like, I'm handing over my control of the scenario. Most things worth achieving, whether that's jobs or relationships or talent or, you know, ability to perform a certain task or art or whatever. It's like there's a sense of like I might not get there. I might not do this thing, but it's a very human thing to have that. We all find ourselves at places and times where we're kind of asking ourselves, or we're asked of us, are you going to pursue this thing that is unsure? There's a thing you want to do, there's a person you want to get to know, there's a job you might want to apply for. It's like this sense of like, hey, there's an unknown in front of you. Do you want to go for it or not? And it's such a human thing to get into those spaces. And then it's also very telling how you react from those spaces. And it dictates so many different things, and it changes even your outlook on change and failure, and how that plays into your political beliefs and your religious beliefs and your relational state. Like it all plays into that whole dynamic of just like dealing with the unknown, dealing with the fear of failure and inevitable change.
Yeah, absolutely, man. But hey, look, so what is something let's try to wrap it up, because this is an absolute monster of an episode. Like I honestly could go into 3.5 hours to 4. But
sure.
like I mean, we're busy dudes. You sow more than I, most likely. But what do you feel is one of the more special things about Seattle? Because of course you said you're more West Coast, but and you're still there now. Is it the kind of the scene that it creates as far as the DIY kind of side of music, or is it just a circumstance of where you was born? Because I'm really interested of like hearing not why people are living there, but what they love about it. So is there anything else besides the music scene that really like keeps you glued to Seattle?
Yeah, I love the I love that there are like 4 very distinct seasons. I grew up in Southern Orange County, California. So I was very,
Wow.
very, very, I know, what gave it away? The everything about me. I grew up down there where there is summer and there is warm fall, and that
Oh
is it.
yeah. Oh,
So
it's
it's not, there's not, and there's in Southern California, there's a lot of different terrain you can get to within, you know, if you drive for an hour or two in any direction, you can get just about every terrain that you would want to go to. But like in Seattle, there are very, very distinct shifts. And I hate how well this ties in with what we talked about. Everything changes all the time. So uh, like spatially around me, I've internalized that change is good because the city goes through changes so frequently that both like organically in terms of like weather and plants, things are like getting very green and then get very gray. The sun is shining and it's gorgeous and the air is pristinely clear, and then it rains for what feels like forever and the sky is gray all the time, and it's just you're constantly in this state of, you're forced into a state of adjustment based on even just the weather, that sinks into my personality and it sinks into my very like being, where it's like, oh man, things are changing are good, things being different than what you expected are good, and like it puts me in this constant state of being okay with change, which has resulted in way more creativity and way more productivity, way better growth in myself, even just personality wise, even beyond my art and my work and all of those things, which benefit exponentially as well. So that dynamic of just everything in motion changing all the time is what I love about it. And it's got something for everybody. It is a very large in terms of its population, so you get a huge diversity of people and beliefs and ideas and experiences, which is brilliant for creating culture. You get it's in the it's you know, Washington, which is super clean in terms of air quality. It's got, you know, it just looks pretty for the, you know, 2 months of the year when the sun is out routinely. You get about another 2 where it peaks out every couple of days, and then it's I love that everything's in change all the time, to put it really simply.
Yeah, because you can get kind of weirdly complacent with monotony. That's definitely something
100%. Yeah,
that's something
absolutely.
I think that's kind of something that is that's kind of wild here in the South, how a lot of like Republican conservatives don't like change. It's because there's really not that much to change. Like I kind of feel like that's kind of been shifting a lot now, because we'll have like freeze, like we'll wake up with like inches of ice on our windows for like a week, and then it's like 95 degrees in the middle of the day, and that's a week after Christmas.
Yep.
So, and that's kind of wild, and that's kind of like the bad change.
Totally.
Where it's like really wild and it doesn't fit a pattern, because we are human and we do need to have patterns.
Totally.
So I think that combination of what you're talking about, summer is summer, fall is fall, winter, spring, etc., that like it's change, but it's predictable and consistent change.
Yep.
So
it's tolerable change.
It's tolerable change. But like I know, like right now, Texas is talking about like there's an inch of ice on our windshields. What the hell's happening? What do we do? And they're pouring water, and they're like, it's not working. I thought it was supposed to freeze off, but it's like freezing the water faster than the water can melt the ice.
Yep. It's nuts. That's another level of weather scenarios that.
Oh man.
Yeah. No thanks. Well, maybe not. I mean, it's interesting, but meanwhile, Seattle was like, oh man, we're gonna get snow this weekend. Everybody freak out. Let's get the temporary temporary weather shelters in place. Let's make sure all the access roads are safe and covered and salted and all this different stuff. And then it rains it snows not that much. I mean, for me, because I said that I grew up in Orange County, but I also spent several years in Spokane, Washington, which is the east side of Washington, which is much more like Central America than anything, even close to anything in Washington. It's just flat and some trees, which is nice, but it snows in the winter. The first winter I was there, I think they cataloged, I want to say like 15 or 20 feet of snow over the winter.
Okay.
Yeah, over the course of the winter, which not bad. I think the biggest in one day or one series of days, like one snowfall, I think was like 8 or 9 feet. Which is it was nuts. And it was like, I remember just by the end of winter, just our driveway was just all the grass was just walls of snow from how much it gotten blown and shoveled off the driveway. It was crazy.
Right.
So I come to Seattle and I'm like, oh yeah, like 3 to 6 inches of snow. What a bummer. But like in Seattle, it's like, I mean, especially with how hilly Seattle is and how it's a big city. There's lots of cars, so you generate a lot of heat. So it's a lot of snow that's coming down, but it gets really slippery and then gets really icy and really hilly. So it is definitely a problem, but it's just funny.
Yeah, because I like down here, I remember. So we'll get snow very rarely. We'll get ice, of course, but when it's snow and it's like an inch or two, like it's like, and I'm sure you've seen the memes, but it's a death. Like people just don't come into work. The city shuts down. They issue quarantines. They're like, you cannot be allowed to be outside. It's death. Did you not know? Are you not aware of the hellscape we're facing right now? Like it's wild. But so let everybody know where they need to find you at. Like let's get your socials. I want everybody to have as much fun as I am listening to your stuff.
Yeah. I think both Instagram and TikTok are the same, which is just the at CodyKilpatrick.mus, which is short for music, which is super predictable, but it is what it is. Twitter, which I am on almost never. I don't even remember what my Twitter handle is. It's probably some garbage pun. Hold on. Because it's totally not. Oh, yeah, it is a garbage pun.
Yes, let's hear it.
It's Kodiak Killer.
No!
CODYAC_killer, which is so bad. That's probably a garbage social media throw out because I'm never on it. But yeah, Instagram and TikTok will have tons of stuff. I know TikTok is going to have a lot more music. I mean, it's been a couple days since, almost 2 weeks since January's been done 2 music videos. I'm mastering and mixing a record, and I have 2 songwriting projects that I'm doing on top of my normal work schedule. So that is why all of that got pushed to February because of January. So that's why I've been dark on social media for most of February, just catching up on all that stuff now. But yeah, TikTok will have a bunch of music stuff on the regular, probably smaller little motifs. Instagram has kind of more bigger, broader strokes, kind of more my holistic production experience, doing lots of like the other stuff, lighting and camera and stuff. But then I've got a EP out under the name Yes I Can't as one word, which is pretty cool. I don't know if you would have even stumbled. Maybe you have from going on Instagram. You might have found some of that stuff. But
I can't. It kind of sparks a memory, but I don't think
it's
I've.
a vague shadow of a memory. That's how it is for
Yeah,
me too. My senior year of college, all of my roommates and I put out that project, which is really, really cool, super collaborative, and got to put out a couple songs together. So that's out, and then that's honestly in the very spirit of what we've been talking about. This last 2 or 3 years has very much been like exercising creativity, and like strengthening those musical muscles, waiting for that inspiration to hit. And so this is 2021 is going to be the year of actualization and putting music out into the world quite a bit more. So yeah, TikTok and Instagram are the ways to go on that for sure.
yeah. I think that's a lot how it's going to be. 2020 is where people decided they're going to do stuff, and 2021 is where they've taken all the practice and dry runs, and it comes into fruition.
For sure. Yeah, that's definitely how 21's already, even just so far, it's just already felt. It's very much like, oh man, all the stuff that we did last year is feeding directly into this year.
Because there's a lot of inspiration, good and bad, just
Totally.
from 2020.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a monster year for inspiration.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for coming on, listening to us. We apologize for dragging you through this monster of an episode. I don't think we've had something this long. Like, I mean, I think me and Justin, we had an episode about this long, and we've been friends for years, so we just knew how to play off each other. But
That's awesome.
I'm surprised and ecstatic on how easily like the conversation just flowed with us. But everybody, if you're not subscribed to me, you need to be. I don't know why you wouldn't be. If you're not subscribed to him, fix that issue. Why are you here? What are you doing? But again, thank you so much for coming on and being with us today. And as always, we'll see you next time. Thanks.